Let me know. Oh, we're live.
And we're
Fantastic.
and we're going. Well, I have here with me today Yvonne. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a journalist. I think an amateur philosopher. I studied advertising, and I have a channel that's called Christ is King Philosophy, where I deal with, let's say, current stuff, political stuff from an Orthodox Christian perspective. I try to, let's say, inform my political philosophy with the theology of the church. Also, I'm very interested in, let's say, polemical topics like masculinity, like what we ought to be. I'm very into, let's say, the pursuit of holiness and the pursuit of truth. So I'm a Westerner. I'm from Argentina, and my main language is Spanish. So my mother tongue is Spanish. So forgive me if my English is not very good. And I'm very thankful for you to have me here.
Your English is probably better than my Spanish, so you're just fine.
Thank you, thank you. So we were gonna talk about masculinity, and you were telling me about how you met your wife, and you were thanking her just now as such a sweet scene.
Yeah, like I mean, I owe a lot of where I am and how I've gotten here to my wife. We met in Tennessee, so she's from here in Washington State. She grew up in a single mom situation with her brother, and they didn't have much money or anything like that. They never went on any family vacation until I think their great uncle passed away, and they got a pretty sizable windfall of money, and they decided to take their first family vacation, and they did a cross country road trip to Tennessee, and we ended up just in the same room. There's a YouTuber, his name's Olin Rogers, and it was his like summer festival thing he was doing. So if it wasn't for that guy, like if it depends if I pick certain variables, it can like paint stuff in somebody's mind like, oh, we met because of the internet, we were long distance for 2.5 years. Like, what was it, eHarmony? No, we met in person because of the internet, because of an influencer, because of a YouTuber, a filmmaker guy. We both liked him, had been watching his old YouTube stuff from like 15, 20 years ago, whatever. um
Mm.
Comedian, interesting guy. I mean, I've he's also from Tennessee, and not like there's a ton of parallels between me and him, but like we were both interested in similar things. And I saw him, this is tangential, but I saw him make decisions that I was pretty firmly against, even when I was like going down this. When my wife met me, I was probably almost furthest adrift in my liberalism phase. Um, is about when she met me. I was off drifting in that, and so this filmmaker, he was married, and I remember him talking about how he wanted kids, but I met him and I talked to him a lot because he had a store in town, and he was there hanging out, and I talked to all of his employees, got to know them. I tried to get a job, didn't get the job, never got the job, but I met his wife, and she was kind of the boss bitch kind of lady, and he he ended up moving to California to try to further his um, filmmaking career. He did a couple seasons of a cartoon that was on gosh, what was it? TBS or something like that. What's his name? I lost his name. The ginger talk show host guy. I lost his name, but he
Conan
sponsored that.
O'Brien.
Conan O'Brien, yeah, Conan O'Brien sponsored him and got him the connections and stuff. But so he had some material success. He had the thing, he was making the show, he was living his dream. But I saw it as, your wife is here in Nashville, and you're over there. She's taking care of this business that you started, and you're trying to get. I saw that as like as a breach of character to me personally. Like I don't think that you should live up, across the country from your wife indefinitely. It was like a 3 or 4 year thing, and not that I know all the details, but I know some because I live in the same place and I was talking to a lot of the same people or whatever, and it just like what he said online. But anyways, my wife and I met in person. We were long distance for 2.5 years. I'd fly up, every 3 or 4 months. My wife would fly down to Tennessee, and then I was kind of going through a really rough patch, and she's like, "Well, why don't you just move up here? Like we're spending, tens, probably 13 grand every year just to see each other for like a month, maybe in days, like maybe 30 days we get to see each other." So yeah, and then 2 years later we got married, and now we just had our second kid. So that's very condensed storyline. But I mean, she saw me at my darkest. Like, there's not a lot of reason why she should have stayed with me for what I was doing, what I was getting into, and I was lost. I was going through it, you could say.
Yeah, maybe she saw a lot of potential. Were your values like aligned at the time that you met her, and did they like drift together towards orthodoxy? How was that like?
So I grew up Protestant, evangelical, Southern Baptist kind of thing, and by the time I was 14, I was probably the only one in my nuclear family that was still actively interested, going to all the groups, going on Sunday, trying to participate in the life of my local Protestant church community. My parents they talked about it, but it wasn't something that we participated in together. Like, the only time we ever read the Bible together was basically like Christmas morning. And we didn't even do a lot of like eating meals together. It was pretty seldom we ate meals together unless it was in front of the TV. There wasn't a lot of actual tradition being handed down in my family unit. But so there's that. And then when I was 18, I've talked about this story as well, but it's part of me, I guess, now, unfortunately. But there was a rumor in my Protestant church that I was a homosexual, and my mom caught wind of this rumor, and she took it very seriously. And she sat me down one night and was just sobbing, saying that she was a failure. Said some really terrible things, and that is the catalyst for me deconstructing my Protestant faith and just starting to go adrift into liberalism and such. So I put myself into the perspective of a homosexual that was being kicked out by his parents. And I was just like, I'm not mom. I'm not gay. I don't know how to prove that to you. Like, she was convinced of it because she'd heard it from like 15 people or whatever. I don't know how those started, but I don't know. I I don't know. Hello. So I was just like, well, if I was gay and I got ousted like this, and my parents kicked me out, and I felt abandoned and cut off, in exile, as it were, then how would I feel? And I started thinking empathetically, emotionally. And then I was like, well, maybe it's not such a bad thing. And I started reading stuff like Rob Bell. He talks about like, homosexuality, when it's talked about in the Bible, isn't about a committed long-term relationship between men. It's actually talking about child molestation, and that's wrong. But you can't talk biblically about homosexuality being wrong. So I started grappling with that and kind of having that as an operating system without it, making sense. Really, it doesn't really make sense. But just starting having those talking points, and that was the gateway drug to me thinking emotionally, empathetically, and putting my reasoning faculties like into a locked box, basically, for a handful of years.
So this was before you met your wife, right?
Yeah. So I met her when I was 19. So I met her probably a year after that event. So she saw me, and we, like, when we first talked, and so her background is that she was Calvary Chapel, which is, from my understanding, kind of like it came out of charismatic movement, but it was trying to swing to the more conservative stuff. So it was like very intellectual, very cut and dry. We come here and we learn things logically, pretty similar to how I grew up. But it just has a different root instead of the Baptist stuff, the Anabaptist stuff that I come from. So her family stopped going to their church because of some weird stuff going on with the leadership, and that like, inconsistencies and weird things they saw there. So we were both kind of unchurched, Christian, but we are skeptical of organized religion, and we both were like, there's a lot of corruption and people just trying to make it into a job and an income, and they're just gathering paychecks. And we had a lot of that same angst And then when I moved up to, and so then there's 2.5 years of us back and forth and having deeper conversations, and we started to read the Bible and um, this kind of stuff. I mean, there's lots of things I didn't relinquish of my Protestantism growing up during this liberal period of my life. I never would have said anything. I was very staunch on abortion, for instance. No matter how liberal, and like I started hanging out with all types of weirdo leftist people and trying to befriend them and witness to them or whatever, and kind of being very soft and not pushing at, like, maybe I don't know, I'm a white cis man, but uh and abortion, I was like, no, that's murder. You're murdering babies. Oh my gosh, my computer just spazzed out. Sorry. Where'd I go? I just opened a new tab. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, you were never gone, I think.
Okay, on my screen, it just like something just popped up. I was like, what the heck? So yeah, so 2.5 years of us just going back and forth, and we did a lot of adventuring, going on hikes and going to lots of concerts or events. We'd she'd fly down to Tennessee, and then we'd do a road trip someplace, and just all that kind of relationship stuff. And then I moved up to Washington, and then I would say that's when I got out of a lot of the toxic leftist friend groups I was in. So that was kind of that was basically the end of my drifting off. So it was probably about a 3.5 year period of being unmoored and deconstructing my faith. And then we started going to house churches, people that like knew Michael Heiser that like worked with him and stuff. And it was like weird stuff. Like we tried to go back to like the roots of Christianity and try to do like the old church, like what the original Christians were doing. So we did communion with garlic bread, of course. Stuff like that. When I was like, like talking, reading the Bible around the table, and it's like we're breaking bread together. So we did that. We went to a charismatic church. I'd never been to one really. We saw a lot of like speaking in tongues, and we got to know those people for like a good year. Good people, but like some weird stuff. And eventually, we went to a baptism, and we saw some stuff like this. We have to leave. Like this is just demonic. And some of those people, there's at least like 2 or 3 couples that we know from there that they've left as well, but ended up being really good friends, and they're ortho aware, slowly moving in that direction, but still pretty charismatic Protestant.
Fantastic, brother. I was just today listening to some Roman Braga because Father Trubo was promoting like the contemporary saints, and he was talking about how we have to be like super grateful to the, let's say, to the places we came from. Like if we were
Right.
Protestant, or if you were so like glory to God for those things. And what you were just saying about, let's say, your experience of your mother, like let's say, not treating you like you thought you ought to be treated, especially because it was false, but
Right.
you put yourself in the position of a person who is, let's say, being betrayed by somebody who is supposed to be an authority figure. um, this this basically like prepares us very well to speak about, let's say, the topic of masculinity and how sometimes masculinity is abused. We Westerners have this tendency to, let's say, get very legalistic and say, for example, like, I'm a very masculine man, but like for a long while I was like, well, I have the last. I'm unmarried, by the way, but I would have the last word in if I were married. And that's really not the way to approach it, because first of all, if there is a hierarchical relationship, uh, for a woman to submit to a man, this means that she is the weakest party in the mix, so it's a bigger risk for her. And also, let's say that, you're not consulting them. Basically, as a man, what you would be doing, let's say, if you were married and you didn't listen to your wife, you didn't like run things by her to see what she was like
Right.
thinking about, that would mean that you would be, let's say, you would be like a raptor taking from her, like extracting from her. It's the same thing that, let's say, brought me to orthodoxy, let's say, or the same thing that we might complain about the tyranny of our current rulers. It's like when the whole jabby thing happened, I was like, these people don't care for me. They don't want. They don't have my best interests at heart.
Right.
So the moment, like, to be in my case, I became orthodox after a lot of reading, but like the last straw was like the COVID stuff, and it was like, if I'm going to become orthodox, because I hate the tyrannical way in which, like, my political rulers, my spiritual leaders, so-called my thought leaders, dealt with me, then I couldn't. It would be hypocritical of me to do the same thing to another person, to not consult them. So
Right.
for me, it's been like a long, let's say, intellectual path into orthodoxy. In fact, I have to thank a girl. I was part of a Protestant of an artist group, a Protestant artist group that was discussing Jordan Peterson, and it was like a spin-off from something that Pastor Paul Clay did, and I was like super into Orthodox theology, and this girl was like super into psychedelics, and like we started butting heads in the sense that I was telling her like please don't promote psychedelics. It's not good for you. And she was like, oh, if you're so orthodox, you should go to the parish and stop talking about orthodoxy because you're a hypocrite, right? And that like actually spurred me to start attending a liturgy and
Right.
like
She was shit testing you. Heard that? Yeah, that's what she was doing.
yeah, definitely. No, glory to God for that. Like glory to God for that. So basically, I wanted to explore these things because perhaps I'm too much of a Westerner, but hopefully it will help. It will help other Westerners in the sense that when shit hit the fan around that period between like 2016 and 2020, I felt like my whole world was shook, and that I needed to hold on to something. So right now I'm like trying to build like a small island of sanity for myself and hopefully others, but not out of a desire to lead them anywhere, but like I've always been like this super, let's say, I've been quite rebellious in my life, and it's not that I'm against there being authority, is that I'm perhaps too judgmental, let's say that, and that's a
Mhm.
personal flaw that I have, because I felt like gaslit constantly by everyone in my life, from my parents to girlfriends I've had to the government to bad priests that I met, and like one like navigating that is super difficult. So in that sense, what you said about, let's say, putting yourself on the position of, let's say, somebody who uh it's is on the margin, let's say, or is marginalized, uh like that's very helpful to understand actually what your responsibilities are. And to preface like this conversation, I would like to say that it's kind of like a weak move, but it's also understandable, the fact that some men like try to hold on to that authority that is God given, because ultimately that authority doesn't come with real privileges. It's just more responsibility. Like
Right.
having the last word is not something you should like be happy about. It's actually you should be quite scared about it, because it almost feels unfair. So I understand when let's say more immature men things like oh, but it's unfair because I'm expected to like be a provider, be all of this, like be the spiritual leader, be, and on the other hand, like women are just expected to be children, and it's not exactly like that.
Well, that
But
sounds like that's somebody who's abdicating from their position as a man, as a husband.
yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing. Like we as a culture have been like systematically undermined by, let's say, the individualism that it runs rampant. Let's put it this way: like your parents, they probably, I'm not talking about your parents in particular, but your parents as a generation, your parents as a generation
They're
probably
boomers. They're boomers. I don't know
the
about
boom.
anybody else, but yeah, I have boomer parents.
I'm sorry for you, bro. I had only one boomer parent, and my dad was X, by the way, and it was like super odd because my mother was older than my dad, and something about it was like off, and yeah, yeah, and that power dynamic was a little bit skewed. So, um, my m- my question to you is, let's say, do you think that perhaps individualism like made parents not try to, let's say, guide their children into fulfilling the roles they were supposed to fill. Like somehow there's been like a loss of tradition. I don't
Yes,
know
definitely.
if you'd agree.
Oh yeah, I
And
am very rootless, and I wish I was not. I mean,
mhm,
my parents didn't talk to me. There was not a lot of handing things down. Um, I didn't. I learned my dad's name like this year because I was like, hey, like I don't know anything about our family. You guys never talked about it. It's just kind of we don't talk about it, I guess. So I just started asking questions and um, yeah, like and like my dad had a lot of skills, but he never. And a part of it's another part of my upbringing was my oldest brother got very sick when I was 7, and he was sick from 7 till. I mean, he's never really recovered, but 7 from when I was 7 to 14 was kind of the worst of it. Pretty formative years, and then my parents divorced, and then it was just like from the rest, all of my high school was just power dynamics between my parents and you know, I've looked at the time and didn't realize it was what was happening. But my parents are both pitting me and my brothers, or specifically me and my little brother, because we were the only ones still in the house, against each other. So like, my mom would tell me like, try to get everything out of your dad that you can, and my dad would talk about crazy things she's done and how unforgiving she is, and it was just there's just the power dynamic stuff. So potentially, a lot of my rootlessness just comes from the broken family aspect, and that my parents would have done a better job under different circumstances. I've tried to talk to my dad about this kind of stuff from my perspective, like, hey, I'm not blaming you. I don't hate you. I'm not saying anything's your fault. Like you had a bad hand of cards dealt to you, with your son being sick. But I just want to, come to you and say, can we start talking about this? Like, this is stuff I saw you did that, and this is how it made me feel, or this is, what I feel like you were teaching me. And he was like, no, I did the best damn job any father could have done in the circumstances, and I don't have anything to feel sorry for. I'm like, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying. I just want to be able to be in communion with you and be able to talk about these things. Like, I'm an adult now. Can we talk? And my dad, I've seen him grow a lot in ways I never would have expected. Especially like when I was in high school, I just thought like he was just going to be the same person saying the same things until he died. And I've seen him change a lot, and he still has so much. Please pray for my father. He's a universalist, and um, he bases all of his theology basically off of like one or two verses, and he doesn't like to have. He likes to pontificate and give advice, but he doesn't participate where you can talk to him and challenge him. Usually, or I had to like choose my battles. But he's met my spiritual father and another priest here, and he's had really good interactions with them. And my dad is like very bitter against Christianity writ large, or evangelicalism is what he calls it, and any kind of organized religion. He's very bitter about it, but he's not even aware of his own bitterness. And he's told me for a few years now that he would visit a local Orthodox church. He just hasn't gotten around to it. But because he's had two really good conversations with two Orthodox priests, it's like the only form of Christianity. He's like, well, all Christianity is terrible. Well, I mean, Orthodoxy is okay because he's had that good experience. What was the question?
if like being individualistic, if the culture being individualistic, being
Yes, definitely. I
rootless.
would say the individualism definitely trickles down to as a part contributing to our rootlessness, because like it brings to mind Childish Gambino has a lyric like, I don't give an F about my last name. Like, he doesn't care where he came from. He doesn't care about what he's going to pass on. And not to just keep crapping on my family and whatever, but my mom, when I was 18, said that I'm done being your mom. I'm not your mom anymore. You're an adult. Go figure it out. So like, I don't know. I kind of think that when your kids are 18 and they're going to make all these decisions, that's like when you need your parents the most. I mean, like, you need them when you're learning to ride a bike or whatever, but when you're going to, hey, it's your turn to be a man and you have to like go figure all this stuff out, you kind of need somebody who's been there.
Well, I kind of agree, but at the same time, like I would say that the way that your parents were with you, even if like, because you don't really need your parents to give you like a propositional list of what they believe. You need them
Yeah.
to like live out their beliefs. So I'd say that in my opinion, like the first 5 years of your life are going to be like the most formative in terms of, let's say, your spirit, because like you can think about it from a secularist perspective, like from a psychoanalytic perspective. Let's say your hangups are going to be kind of Petersonian what I'm saying. I'm sorry, I apologize.
No,
but
no.
but your hangups are going to be mostly let's say related to your parents' hangups. And like the thing that feels a little bit unfair, let's say, is that, let's say, we Christians, especially we Orthodox, we believe that we are born with a certain inherited sin, let's say, from our parents. So and that the fact that we are socialized in a certain way, let's say, um, perpetuates and even introduces more sin into us, even if we, as a, let's say, as a newborn baby, weren't as corrupted by our birth itself, but
Right.
by the time, yeah, by our formation in our mother's womb. But I think that this very individualistic society is the one that allows someone like your mom to say, I have no responsibilities towards
Right.
you anymore,
Like
because,
when was
like,
the,
yeah,
when would that have entered into the mind of a mother to cut herself off from her young? I feel like it's probably just somewhere in the 20th century with this idea of, you know, people are adults when they're 18 and they go off and start their own family. You've done your job. You look at having a family as a job, as something that you begin and end.
exactly,
And
yeah.
that's probably a very new idea.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, man. Like, I fantastic. Thank you for saying that, because it's enlightened me. Um, I was going to go over like like some bullet points, even though I'm very bad at going over bullet points. So they were more like paragraphs of what makes a man a man, and understanding these bullet points from the perspective of the fact that we're already broken. So it's not like a legalistic like I'm the bishop and you, or I'm God, and I'm telling you how you should be, but
These are not
rather,
commandments.
yeah, these are, let's say, things that we can agree that make a man admirable, let's say, and that are, let's say, almost universally considered virtues, that I think we're losing because we're getting a lot of, let's say, bad advice by bad actors. Um, so you can tell me if you agree, if you disagree, if you have something to add. And I want to like delve a little bit deeper into each one of them. But uh, first, like I put first on the list one thing that I got from my primary school, which I'm very thankful for. It was like a British expat primary school, and they had this value of like walk your talk. And I think even though it originally was like a girls' school, by the time I went there, like they had made it mixed, like boys and girls, and like you knew that the people really lived that out, like the the headmistress was a woman of great integrity, and she really lived that, and you could feel that even when you were disciplined. Like, for example, I remember one time, like, I don't know, I was a very, very rebellious and like mischievous, so I would be getting into detention a lot. But they had like a personal relationship with me, and they liked me, and like I knew I was loved. So I remember one of the punishments was like fix up the library, you know. And like I was, I don't know, 5 years old or something like that, 7 years old, not much older than that, and I was like fixing the library, and looking back on it, it was like, dude, this is justice. It's like you were making a mess, now you're helping fix stuff. Like and the way that they gave they taught you not just like this academic skills, but rather like how to be a human being. They humanized you by their example. And this is, I think, one of the most important things that you can do as a man. Is like, be honorable, like say what you mean and mean what you say, do what you
Right.
say you're gonna do. Like, try to make your worth um like close to to what you speak. Like, be who you say you are in every situation, and try to be that. So I think that's one of the best indicators if a person is a good person. Is like, that's the cardinal virtue for me. But perhaps
So
what would you
it
say?
was so it was be walk the talk, right?
Yeah,
So do not be a hypocrite.
yeah,
I would say that's a very good ideal, and part of that ideal would be understanding that you are going to fail because you're striving for that. Even I mean, even just this week, I've uh, made some errors in just different aspect. Not to get into it, but just getting into different things in my life with my family, and I've made errors of not communicating enough or trying to solve things on my own without getting advice, or feeling that putting pressure on myself to where I have to get something done within a certain amount of time. And then that it's easy for me to put on blinders, and I'm operating under the assumption, I'm trying to do what I'm saying I'm about. But a lot of times I've come to a place where I'm like realizing, okay, I put these blinders on to like hit a certain goal, let's say, but that has made me neglect other things that I need to be about, that I say I'm about. Like, I could abstract it. Like, I need to take care of my family. I need to be the man who's going to bring home the bacon. So I'm going to put these blinders on, do get a bunch of extra shifts, work some doubles, bring some extra money in so my wife can feel more secure and all that. But that can come at a cost of, now I'm more tired. My daughter has to play, and I say, just a minute, and then she goes and plays. I'm like, okay, she forgot about it, and I can just like read my book or take a nap or whatever. So you can, as a man, especially, you're not, I don't know what the rest of this list is, but as a man, you're finding that tension between putting out all these different fires of emergencies come up. The roof needs to be fixed. There's trouble at your job. Your neighbor needs you for something, whatever. And you have all these different things you need to go and take care of. But you can forget, or you can lose sight of why you're doing that. You're doing that for your family. You're doing that to give glory to God. You can't just not put out the fires, but you can put blinders on where it becomes about the fires, or you're not prioritizing them. So, yeah, I would say that you should be trying to uproot hypocrisy within yourself, to say things that you mean, and to have the discipline to hit the mark that you've set for yourself. That you've said it. You said you're going to do something. You need to do it. And I see myself failing that all the time. And you can always find an excuse or something that can take the blame rather than you. You can abide within Adam's sin. I have a month-old right now, and she didn't sleep like a wink last night. Just kept us up. And I was like, I'm going to get up early. I'm going to go work out. I'm going to do this. So I try to get some extra stuff done. And I hit snooze and hit snooze and hit snooze until I'm like, I have to go to work. So, that's me being inconsistent. Didn't really benefit me. Didn't really feel any more rested, sitting there in bed thinking about how I need to get up instead of actually sleeping. And that's a weakness in me. I hate seeing weak men, and I hate seeing that weakness and that, effeminacy being expressed through man. And part of that is because I see it in myself, and I can get very frustrated. Like, why am I not doing what I need to do? What is this weakness in me? How do I extract it? So yes, that's a good rule. It's a
No,
good thing to strive for.
fantastic. Thanks for that, because it was a great compliment, in the sense that, like, sometimes I tend to be a little bit too severe with myself. Let's say
Oh, me too. Oh yeah.
and like, I think it speaks of different places in your life. Like, let's say when you're just starting out at getting disciplined at something, it's super hard. But, like, let's say when you're already feeling like it doesn't have to be true, but you're already feeling like you can master the things that you're supposed to be doing. So then you take on more, perhaps more than you can chew. And let's say you start being a little bit proud, and perhaps I romanticize a little bit the kind
Yeah.
of hard man that is like, no, I said I'm gonna do this, and if I said it, I'm gonna die before, like, if before I renege on my word. It's like,
Right.
before I go back on my word. and that could be a little bit of pride, and I see that a lot in myself. But at the same time, it's very difficult to notice a difference uh, when, for example, you're about, let's say, I don't know, standing up for your family. It's like when you're standing up for your family, there's like an inner feeling that you're a rock and you're unmovable. It doesn't matter who you're up against. Like you're not
Right.
gonna be you're gonna, and I think, at least I feel a lot of, let's say, power, or it could even be, I could be mistaken, but it feels like it's like holy anger, it's like
Yeah, I mean, there's
um
definitely a place for anger. It just needs to be directed and expressed in a godly way.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting how those two dynamics play off, in the sense that it's like, if you're too rigorous, you're gonna fall into, like, let's say, it being into being disorganized again. And if you're too disorganized, you're still not going to be refreshed by
Right.
by that lack of organization. So it's more of an attempt of being disciplined. It's like it's a discipline that you it's a medicine that you have to take. It's not something that you can just like blurt out to the world, and like demand the world to bow to your perfect system of how a man should be. So that's not the purpose of this talk, but rather to explore, let's say, things that we consider virtue. Like virtue, the word virtue means manly. And I would also like want to know your opinion, because like you said it was like effeminate to stay in bed, and like it's not I'm not interested to like in erasing the differences between like male and female, but it seems to me like, what, in a way, it's wrong to call it effeminate, but at the same time, it's like women are not supposed to be playing the virtue game in the same way as men are. Like
Right.
their virtues are supposed to be to go more like below the surface in a way, right? Or, or what do you think about it? Like how does women attain virtue in that sense?
I mean, in the church, different acathist, it often talks about women, like women saints, having like a manly courage for the faith and things like that. So I would suppose that's the virtue, and that's a way to speak about it. That's a way of having that characteristic of being firm and on the rock, that you're not going to be shaken and moved. My wife and I have the last like year have had a pretty ongoing conversation, because we'll be listening to a podcast or whatever, and I'll hear a guy say something. I'm like, that's so womanly of him to say. And she's like, what? Like, are you insulting women? I'm like, no, I'm not insulting women. It's not like with a woman, if a woman said that, it would be like within its context and it would have its use. Like a lot of times women, you can say like, your wife's nagging at you or whatever, and she's annoying you. But it's like, yeah, but what is a wife's role? It is to try to bolster you up, to show you your own flaws, show you your weaknesses, so that you can strengthen yourself. So you have to listen to that and not there. I really believe that, and I've come to believe, because I think when I first got married, I had a lot of naive idealism of like how the perfect husband should be, or what the ideals were. And it was pretty like egalitarian, and I've had a lot of those things, just especially like my wife and I are in like this power dynamic stage of our marriage. We have two kids, and there's all the bills, and how who's in charge of what, and how do we get things done, and all the practical stuff. So we're in this power dynamic stage, and it keeps coming back again and again, that I've come to believe that there's a double standard, and that's a good thing. We're not supposed to be held to the same standard, because you and I are not the same. The head is not the body. A man is not a woman. My wife can
Okay.
come to me with, fears and uncertainties and doubts and all this stuff. But if I came to my wife with a lot of those same things, that would not be good for our relationship. And you could say, well, shouldn't she be there for you? It's like, yes, but I think a man, and maybe it's just because of the time of life, and we're in an early marriage. We've been married for 5 years, but I think a man needs to lick his wounds in private, or have men around him that can bolster him up. And a wife, you're not supposed to be putting a lot of those things onto your wife, like your wife comes to you and puts it on you. because whenever I did, I felt like, I should just be able to be open to my wife and tell her these things I'm uncertain about, or doubts in myself, or inadequacies I see in myself. That would just make everything worse. Now she's uncertain in me. She doesn't trust, like she's lost faith in me. So it was like, oh, that's not what I wanted. I did. I just, maybe I should talk to my priest about that, or some of my guy friends or whatever. So yeah, definitely there is double standards, and that's how it should be.
So to play devil's advocate for a little while, like what justifies there being, and I don't mean in the sense of like me personally, I definitely believe that there's a double standard, but like what is the win for Ben? Like what do we get out of the double standard? If
Well,
it makes
you
any
don't
sense.
abdicate your throne as a man. Like if I start, if let's say I do the things that a woman does or wife does, my wife will sometimes like, you sound a lot like your mom right now. I'm like, oh, that stings. She's like, why? I'm like, you're saying I sound like a wife. I sound like a mother. I sound like a woman. And again, I'm not insulting women, but that is not how a man, a husband, a father should sound. Uh, so what do I get out of the double standard? Well, first, I think I am able to strengthen my marriage, because every time I the first 2 or 3 years of our marriage, when I thought more egalitarian, it made everything harder. So I think it's just kind of like taking things as they are. It's, instead of like having this immature view of like, oh, well, I should just be able to like eat whatever I want and still look and feel great and be really athletic. It's like, no, you kind of just have to butt up against reality and fix your diet and go work out and stuff. You can't just say that you can do it the way you want. You can't just say, oh, my wife and I are equal and like we're both the head of the family. Like that's just not how it is. And maybe you could say that's not a great argument, but I
Oh,
don't know.
I'm not. It's not. I'm not playing a gotcha to get like a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
argument. I'm like simply thinking this out for myself as well, in the sense that we come from like Western society is very, let's say, libertarian or liberal, in the
yeah, yeah.
sense that we think that the authority is inherently suspect in a way. And
Right.
shout out to you for sending Mano this song, this Beatle song, this like the Beatle King, like going to
Oh,
the
that one. Yeah,
fire.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
I
that's a good
thought it was
song.
like it's a super beautiful song, but at the same time, like there's a reading of of those lyrics that you can make that is like it's kind of like a worship of power, in the sense like to give context to our listeners, it's like it's a song that is about, let's say, a beetle kingdom being destroyed by a fire, and the lyrics like make the fire into, let's say, the fire of God, right?
Right.
God as the all-consuming fire. And the Beetle King eventually, let's say, renounces his kingdom to become one with the flame. And the song is basically, in a sense, if I want to read it charitably, to inspire us to become one with the fire, to become saints, to
Right.
become to pursue God. But a more cynical reading of the lyrics could be like you're
Right.
worshiping
Yeah,
a power.
a more literalist.
Yeah, it's like God is destroying you, and you're worshiping him just because he's stronger than you, because you cannot stop it. Like, so is he a loving God, or is he really just, let's say, a wrathful God, right? And there's a lot of that dynamic going on in our Western uh culture, because, let's say, all our mythology is about, let's say, regicide. It's all about, let's say, for example, in the case of the US, or the case of Argentina, it was all about, let's say, becoming independent from, let's say, our original, let's say, because we were colonies, like becoming independent from our mother, from our fatherland, let's say. And in that sense, like there's like an inbuilt Gnosticism that presupposes, let's say, that the world itself is kind of like a trap, and you have to rebel against reality itself in order to be authentic. And this pattern is being played out to the point that what we are used to hearing is that, like, let's say, the rich are bad because, like, they're all corrupt, the powerful as well, and kings, they take your sons and your daughters. And a lot of that is true in a sense, and a lot of that is even, let's say, systemically true in the sense that, of course, your king is going to take your sons for soldiers and your daughters, I don't know, for workers or whatever, like, or for wives. But the question is, does the ruler love the ruled? And
Right.
and like when I hear men complain, let's say, about women today, it could be men outside the church, or like men go their own way, those kinds of types.
Yeah. Yeah. All just male feminists.
Yeah. And or when I hear, let's say, some immature Orthodox like complain that Orthodox women are not let's say virtuous, because I don't know, they're not very faithful, they're not chaste, they don't dress appropriately, those kinds of things, or they're too self-willing, which are all things I agree with in a sense. The problem is, there is a weakness in them that I see, but there's also, let's say, a philosophical problem that I haven't been able to solve, in the sense that what's in it for them. Let's say, why not become a monastic? Because let's say, if you're truly a Christian, an orgasm is not gonna be worth, let's say, chaining yourself to a wife. Like, it has to be something you do out of love. So sometimes I've heard people say before that there aren't good spiritual fathers because there aren't very good spiritual children, and which I don't really know how to understand that dynamic, in the sense that, what do you mean, that you first need the obedient aspect, like to be present in order for there to be, let's say, a good authority? It could be, I don't know, but perhaps you have
Well,
something to.
that just trying to think of that dynamic, and I'm open to somebody else having a better take, but I would say, especially like in like the spiritual life with the spiritual father, if you are not willingly putting yourself in obedience and submitting to a spiritual father, then he cannot tradition down the faith to you. He cannot help you walk along the path, because I mean, my spiritual father says, like, if you want to leave the church, I'm not going to stop you. I don't want you to, and I'm not, if you want to be my friend, great, awesome. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here for you to be saved. I'm here to get you saved, to do whatever I can. If I need to be firm, I will be. But if you choose to not submit yourself to me, then I'm not going to force you. So he can't be your spiritual father unless you decide to decide. And I'm sure there's some people that, like, I mean, even for me, like, confession's pretty hard. Like, I mean, I go to confession obviously, but um there's definitely like a aversion to it, and but it's really good when I go. I mean, I get the spiritual direction and that I need. But
Well,
I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that that feel that same aversion to it, and then don't go, or maybe they don't reveal themselves to their spiritual father. You can't be guided if you don't allow that.
mhm. Yeah, I'll throw you another curveball. Let's see how you reply, because I'm curious based on this answer. Like, for example, I feel like, for example, there are a lot of bad priests, like giving very bad spiritual advice, and like they have like different standards for different people, which I guess is fair, because you cannot expect everyone to give the same, right? Or
It just
to have.
depends on the standard. It just depends on I mean, different people need different medicine.
Yeah. But like, when I hear, for example, let's say, a common complaint among priests, that people nowadays can't be told anything, because they take it like they're deeply offended, and like they're thin-skinned and all of those things, and that means that they cannot basically be firm with them, because they might risk losing them. And there comes a point
Right.
where, like, you can also see a, let's say, more worldly dynamic, in the sense where you see, let's say, more modernist priests or more lefty priests that like are so afraid of losing, like, their flock, uh, that they actually don't enforce any rules, right? And
Right.
the question that always comes to me is, well, what's the chicken and what's the egg here? Like, what comes first? Is it like their lack of discipline is because they're fundamentally disobedient, or are they not offered the right discipline? And my tendency would be to say, well, priests should offer, of course they should be mindful of who they're, like, of the standard, and to whom that standard is addressed. Like, they should pick a discipline that the other person is able to to comply with, but at the same time, it is they who should find, let's say, roles for people within the church to help out, those kinds of things. And in that sense, the authority would flow down vertically, in the sense of, let's say, giving order, which is like, it's give us uh, today like give us our daily bread. It's like, it's the meaning, like give us the meaning of what we should be doing. And in that sense, that's kind of like the role of the male. We're supposed to be priests in our homes.
Right.
And but the thing is, if you don't want to, let's say, direct other people's lives, does that mean you're not a man? Or does that mean, because at the same time, it's like, for example, I don't know if you like the Lord of the Rings, but like
If I like the what?
the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yes, very much so.
And like the films, I was a big fan of the Lord of the Rings. It was super important for me and my best friend growing up. Like we would watch them religiously. And I noticed when I read the book that the character of Aragorn was changed very dramatically,
Of who?
perhaps
Sorry, you
for the
cut out.
better.
Of Boromir?
Aragorn.
Oh,
No, of
Aragorn. Okay.
Aragorn.
Yeah, yeah.
And like in the books, he's like a go-getter. He's like, I'm gonna be king. Like I'm gonna rule. And in the movies, he's like, oh, perhaps I'm not gonna be worthy of ruling, because this illness is in me. Like I carry my ancestors' faults and such. Because perhaps
He's more full of doubt.
he's more full of doubt. And I think that it shows us that Hollywood was wanting to have, let's say, a more not only that it wanted to have, let's say, a character arc for because they wanted to give him more protagonism in the story, in a sense, and to have an internal conflict helps that. But at the same time, they wanted to, let's say, promote an ideal of heroism, which is, let's say, more of an idealized humility. Because if you, and I say idealized in the sense that Christ did not have those kinds of doubts. Like Christ was tempted in the desert. Christ endured a lot of let's say, temptation and tests. And the cross itself is it was super painful, but the approach was not like, I'm not good enough. The approach was, I
Yeah.
don't want to suffer. I don't want to suffer needlessly, because my human nature does not like it. Suffering is not a part of human nature. So, and in that sense, perhaps I'm wrong theologically. Please correct me if anybody, if I'm wrong.
Well,
But
yeah. I mean, Christ doesn't have a gnomic will, so he didn't have that doubt within himself that we are subject to.
yeah. So anyway, I started thinking about, let's say, those kinds of positions, those kinds of ideals of what masculinity should be like. And it's like, who's more masculine, book Aragorn or movie Aragorn? And I'd say book Aragorn is more masculine, right?
I mean, I would say you may potentially yes, but I would say that movie Aragorn wrestling with doubts doesn't mean he's not manly. I think it would be manly if he succumbed to his doubts, but I think that wrestling with them, he still becomes the king at the end. He still becomes the man, becomes the ruler he needs to be.
Mhm.
Even though he's more full of doubt, even though he's uncertain.
Okay, fine. I wanted to have your opinion on it, because
Yeah.
it's a very interesting topic for me. So to me, there's something I like about Aragorn, is that uh, in both the movies and the books, he's raggedy at the
Yeah.
beginning, like because
He's Strider.
yeah, he's like trying to, let's say, defend the people, despite the people not knowing he's defending them, right? So we see his motivations, like, and we see that perhaps virtue does not align with appearances always. So that's like another, let's say, another point that I think we could connect with virtue, in the sense that men are no nonsense, and like we favor, let's say, the underlying truth. We favor, let's say, what functionality. We favor that things run smoothly, other more than, let's say, valuing appearances, appearing like valuing social norms,
Right.
valuing, let's say, politeness, those kinds of things, because we are the ones who are like responsible ultimately for how things turn out, for our family at least. So that means that, let's say, uh, we have to we have to like put the brakes on people sometimes with threat of force. And I don't know. It's that dynamic between, let's say, the pseudo humble, like, self doubting, and the I'm gonna stop you on your tracks. I think there's like a tension over there, in the sense that it's very easy for people from the outside, like we see what's happened lately with wokeness and all that, for people to just like spout their propositional philosophy of how you should be. Or even to put propaganda, like films that tell you what a man should be like.
Mhm.
And basically, they're not only do you need a great discernment to see, I think this model is kind of flawed, because a lot of effort is going on to those things. And there's something that kind of is super difficult to apprehend about this stopping the, let's say, the other from taking what's yours, which is something that I also see among women when they're defending their children, which is basically, no, 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 these things are mine. I'm the one responsible for them, because I'm the one who's taking care of them. Who are you to tell me? And in that sense, let's say, there's the revolutionary aspect of, let's say, Western society. uh, Find something that seems very masculine in principle, like I'm going to defend my own, but which, when faced with hierarchy, is actually a feminine way of usurpation, of like,
Right.
I'm not gonna submit myself. So in that sense, like, masculinity and
That's the
femininity.
individuality coming into play.
Yeah, yeah. And like, there seems to be, like, you cannot be speaking about masculinity without speaking about femininity. And thinking about them as categories that transcend the male and female genders. In that sense, it sounds super, let's say, woke to say that, like, gender is bigger than man and woman. But if you think about it from a, let's say, more cosmological perspective, male is what gives itself, like the sun to the earth, and the earth is what receives, let's say, it's what receives that seed, right?
Have
And
you read the Space Trilogy by Lewis?
no, no.
Okay, the second book, Paralandra, gets into this a lot.
Oh, super interesting, man. Super interesting. I want to read it, but
Yeah, get
like,
back to me once
no,
you
no,
read
no.
it.
But like, the thing with being goal oriented is that it makes us more exhaustive, and it makes us more obsessive, and it makes us a little bit coarse. But at the same time, I think that some of the models that we are being given of masculinity, they either go too soft or too coarse, when in reality, perhaps, let's say, I don't think men are by nature coarse. I think we're made to endure coarseness, but that we should actually be like scalpel like precise and sharp, so that we can offer others something that is not necessarily coarse, but that we can deal with that coarseness without ourselves becoming coarse. I don't know if you have thoughts about those things.
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind, you'll hear a lot of people like in the manosphere, like Jocko Willink, saying like, "You got it, you got it." Not, I'm apparently very dehydrated, can't do his voice. You got to play the. It's not even his voice. You got to play the game. Your boss sucks and he's tyrannizing you and making you do all this stuff. Like, you want to move ahead, you gotta play the game. So, I've seen lots of memes. There's a really old meme on the internet where it's like a idealistic guy. He's like blue and he like stands up and he says something he believes, and then somebody like criticizes him, and he like it zooms out and there's like this crowd of gray people, and he's like slowly fades in, becomes gray as well. It's like you're gonna run up into adversity, you're gonna run up into cynics and jaded people, and you're gonna have to you like that coarseness is going to rub on you. You're gonna run up against it, but you have to not let it affect you. Or if it does affect you, you have to be able to see it and then correct course. I mean, like I said earlier at the beginning, like you can have a certain goal that's a righteous goal, a goal that you should as a man have, and you're pursuing that one. but you can putting the blinders on to you not see that another goal is being neglected, that another fire is starting to build that you should be putting out instead of this one. This one becomes irrelevant because of this other fire. I lost my train of thought. I had it. There was something there. Say the question one more time. I was going to a place.
No, I'm lost as well, man.
That's
It
okay.
seems that as men we're so like focused on one thing that we aren't able to see like the forest for the trees sometimes,
Yep. It
because
happens.
we
Yep.
get like obsessive, and we're talking about those kinds of things, obsessiveness, coarseness, those kinds of
Yeah.
things. But
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So,
um,
I mean, yeah, like, I kind of remember where I was going. Like, Origin, people often say, was fighting against like the Gnostics, fighting
mm,
against their heresies, and he got too close, and he started falling into those heresies. So, in his efforts to put out the fire of Gnosticism, he was consumed by that fire.
yeah.
So, even when you are doing something righteous, when you're fighting against degeneracy, whatever, you have to keep the highest. Oh, that's my own. Oops. You have to keep the highest thing in mind. You have to keep the giving Christ the glory. You can't have the blinders on for this goal to where that goal becomes irrelevant because you're consumed by a fire at your back. You're so coarse and callous you don't even feel the heat on your back.
Okay, so then my question would be, again, to reiterate, I'm being perhaps a little bit annoying with it, but like, what's in it
No,
for us? Like I love the idea of making my own stake on the world, like claiming like I want to do this. This is my project. I'm deciding this, and yet at the same time, it's like women can do the same thing as well, right? It's
they can
it's
do stuff pretty good too now. It's like
it,
women can do stuff now, man. It's
yeah.
post World War II. They can do stuff.
Can is our advantage that we're just like simply physically stronger and let's say different cognitively, not to say something more polemical.
We can put those blinders on and yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, I mean that's a huge part of it, but I mean, like, what's in it for you? I mean, depends on who's asking. I mean, a lot of times, if you listen to the manosphere people, red pill people, they'll talk about, like, if you're going to get married, make sure you get a prenup and always have a back door out. Don't let them get your stuff. Don't let you got to fight for yourself. But I mean, that really is just like hedonism wrapped in a guise of traditionalism.
Mm.
So it depends on what you want, bucko. Like, if you want to be a man and be a good person, and if you want to follow Christ, you have to pick up your cross. What's in it for me for picking up my cross? You become like God.
Oh
You
yeah,
become
definitely.
filled with the Holy Spirit, but it's not an easy road. It's a hard road.
Oh, definitely, definitely. But for example, let's say you can be a monastic, you can be a unmarried priest, let's say. And one of the things that I'm constantly thinking about is, as a man, as an unmarried man, is like a married man is like, I want to be like a fire in the sense that, like, I want to be like consumed by God. In that sense, I want to be a saint. I want to be an extension of God's kingdom on the earth if it's possible. But at the same time, like, that fire can land in hay, perfectly dried, and willing and able to perpetuate that fire, or you can be dropped in the ocean and be smothered by the water.
Right.
And so so in that sense, I think we tend to fall into, let's say, speculation about who we are and who the other person is. Like, we it's not that we necessarily compete, but rather that when we look at, let's say, the marketplace. I hate to use that word, but when we look at what we're being offered, let's say, what the people we know, to use a less polemical word, when we look at what people we know, it's very easy for us to um, to say, I don't want to marry any one of these. Like, and I'm not thinking about this as a man. I'm thinking about this, if I were a woman, um, and I looked around, I would be like, why am I going to, if I'm allowed to work, I'd rather be poor and be captain of my own ship without a man having to tell me what I should do, instead of being yoked to a man who I will probably despise eventually because he doesn't have virtue. So it seems like we're kind of
It's
like
less
two.
risk.
Yeah, it's less risk, and like we become a little bit too critical, too let's say subtle, let's say, or too trusting in our own faculties, in our own abilities to be able to judge people, but we don't really have either the virtue or the discernment to be able to recognize virtue, right? So in that sense, what I see is a lot of people who, for good reasons or bad reasons, they don't want to risk, let's say, yoking themselves to the opposite sex because they understand the deep responsibility that this entails. And for example, to simply bring my own personal experience of people I've listened to in my parish, like one of the guys who's like a 25-year-old kind of successful guy, he said, no, I want to have peace of mind. And he doesn't want to be a monastic, but he's basically, he subtextually implied with this short exchange that we had, like, I'm not marrying any one of these crazy bitches because they're going to make my life hell.
They're going to steal
And
my peace of mind.
yeah, they're going to steal my peace of mind. And the Bible itself says, like, it's worse to marry a to marry a contentious woman than to be, I don't know, in the desert, suffering. And like, so there is this, let's say, apprehension that we naturally have. And it's not just like a war of the sexes, as I say, simply dealing with the sins of another person, right? And let's say that the difficulty that it is to harmonize with someone else, especially when we're ourselves so confused. And we Western converts tend to, let's say, harp a lot about, let's say, our own cultural milieu, but at the same time, like, I heard my parish priest, who's from an Orthodox family. He's from a Russian family, so it's not like he's a Westerner per se. Exactly, he said that he wasn't as Orthodox when he was young. That he became more Orthodox as he went after he married his wife, and that we are still recovering Orthodoxy because, at least for the Russians, their feeling is that, like, after communism crushed them, like they're still like picking up the
Right.
pieces and like trying to reconstruct the faith from
Yes.
the little that they had. So in a sense, they're in a very similar situation to us. And I don't know what's the case for other nations, like, I don't know, Greece, or, but like modernity has been a
It's been
bludgeon.
exported pretty much
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, just uprooting all the nations as much as it can, making them all rootless, making them individualized, which makes them more manipulatable. Because now you don't have to sell them on this stuff anymore. Like, you can just, they are full of all these things. Why should I get married? What's in it for me? What do they bring to the table? And I think, a healthy version of that is the cautiousness of self-reflecting. Am I the person that can lead, that can offer something to the table in the first place? Is this the right person for me to get married? And I think a temptation is to look at it and do the MGTOW thing of, all women and suck now. Like, they're just going to try to, they're gold diggers. Yeah. And I'm sure there are plenty of them, but you can't go overboard where you abdicate your manhood or just because, there's not a lot of great women out there, or whatever, from your own perspective. Like, but you have to have that sobriety. And I think, especially from the Orthodox perspective, I mean, marriage is a martyrdom. I can say from my own experience, especially like from where I was starting the relationship with my wife, and we've known each other for 10 years next year, that yeah, I don't even know where I'd be without her. And I would not be half the man, half of where I am, half the integrity that I have. I'd be off trusting my own self and getting lost in sophistry, and I'd be chasing my tail. So, and it's been hard. I mean, yeah, there's because, especially when you're married, especially when you have kids and you're trying to figure all this stuff out, like, all of the things that you've put under the rug just have to come to light, and you gotta deal with it all.
Mm.
You going back a little bit, you said, like, about the priest, like, They're like, there's a lot of chimeras out here, especially in the West. And you mentioned Russia's in a similar situation because of communism trying to uproot orthodoxy and stop the transition, stop the tradition from being passed on. And who's at fault with it being a spiritual father or the spiritual children being rebellious? And I think it's hard to just blanket and generalize in one way. It's a lot of it's contextual and situational. So let's go to 2020. I knew a few priests at the time at 2020, and let's say one of them had a mission parish of 35 people, let's say, and 30 of the people were super woke. I mean, maybe there was normal people, but when COVID happens, they start saying we need to do all these restrictions. We need to keep people from venerating. We needed to have this distancing and masks and multiple spoons and all this stuff. But the priest himself is against that and wants to hold the tradition, doesn't want to give in. But if he holds to his own virtue in that way and is firm, his whole parish could just explode, because now you have 90% of the people who are wanting this thing going to criticize him, leave, report him, whatever it is. So he has to make some compromises because this is the flock that has been given to him. Where another priest I knew was super on board with it, but the congregation wasn't. And then me and 6-7 other families ended up going to a different parish because we didn't have that trust in the shepherd of that flock, that local parish, that we saw him giving into things or making compromises in ways that made us feel like, if things get really bad, we don't know if this priest is going to protect us. And we should be careful not to get into disobedience or overly critiquing or going into Donatism. The sacraments are still there. The grace was still present within this man that I believe was making errors. We should be praying for him. And he was, I really miss that man. I think he's a really good man despite the errors that I saw.
Yeah. Well, there's another, let's say, let's take a small tangent, but like there's another like problem that is the opposite of Donatism, which is it is not a heresy, but like if you only go for the sacraments and you treat it like you're driving
like
to
magic or something.
Yeah, you're driving through McDonald's and you're getting like your sacrament. Like if you don't have like a parish life, if you don't live orthodoxy in community, then you're not Orthodox. And like that's something that to me scares me.
I mean, that sounds like nominalism, not like nominalism, the like the philosophical system, but like being a nominal cultural Christian kind of thing.
Yeah. So in that sense, like we're trying to build up our communities at the same time that we're working with very little in a sense, but like we have to work in faith with what little we have. And I think that's there has to be, let's say, a love, like you said. That's what being a man is. It's like you got to be able to see like the potential. You got to be able to see the potential in the water. You got to see the shining fish there, and you got to like throw your net to throw the fish hook and like fish up what's good about reality. And I think that's what's in it for us. Like we can actually build good families, but we are so scared of sin.
Yeah.
We're so scared of ourselves. We're so scared of women. We're so scared of the government. We're so scared of economics, losing our jobs, this and that. And it feels like it's kind of like a stacked game, in the sense that of course we have all these things going against us, but ultimately we can triumph if we're willing to suffer in the process. Now,
Right.
This leads me to another, let's say, point regarding, let's say, male and female relationships, for example, or even, let's say, a relationship to the faith, because people have different, let's say, commitments to the faith, and people have different abilities to, let's say, fulfill what the faith is telling us we should strive for, right? And this means that sometimes a couple has a different, let's say, a different commitment, and one party is having to, let's say, drag along the other party, because let's say some people feel like, well, I have to marry an Orthodox person because I'm Orthodox. So they marry a nominal Orthodox, and then they're surprised that that person was simply culturally Orthodox. Like they were, for example, I'm inventing, but they were cradle, and that's the church they were born in, but they don't really like care that much about it. And like they're glad that you're Orthodox, but they married you because they thought, I don't know, they thought you would be different as a husband, let's say. And now you're stuck with this person, let's say, who is going to be your cross for the rest of your life. So I see a lot of people just, let's say, trying to be mindful of those things, but it's at the same time it's something that you cannot know beforehand. Of course, you should
Right.
definitely try to meet people, and I've heard both arguments from both sides in the sense of like, if you're too picky, you will never let's say marry. And I've also made like the opposite argument in the sense that you don't choose your bishop, you don't choose, let's say, ideally your parish priest. Uh, e- but the thing is, we're in a situation where we are choosing our bishops, we are choosing our parish priests, because we can church hop, we can church shop,
Yeah. Yeah.
we can do all these things. So at the same time, it's like we're finding our ways. And a lot of people who try to speak about these topics, they're either they married before they became Orthodox, or they, and this is thankfully a small minority, but there are people who say, I can become Orthodox at any point in my life. Right now, this is what I'm able to manage. This is all the Orthodoxy you're going to get out of me. Don't tell me I'm living in the world. I'm simply trying to make, I don't know, my career work or whatever. And they justify living a worldly life, and let's say doing worldly things, or the behavior of the people around them, like the people who they call their friends. And there's a real problem because in a sense it's super easy for me to want to, as an Orthodox Christian who's like super committed, to say it would be way easier for me to be less zealous, for example, and try to be and try to, I don't know, perhaps, I don't know, marry a Catholic girl who doesn't even like believe in the faith very much, and then try to convert her to Orthodoxy through my example or through my argumentation or whatever delusion I might have. And it's so hard because there are no hard and fast rules, and priests
Right.
are on both sides of the fence. Like I've heard priests say, "Oh, you should marry a Catholic because you're not going to be able to find an Orthodox girl," or I've heard priests say, "You should only marry an Orthodox woman who's like super devout because you're going to surprise yourself. You're going to get divorced eventually if your faith is incompatible. Like they're going to make your life a living torture."
Oh, I think we. Oh, you dropped out and came back. Are you still there?
My friend, my yes, I'm here. My friend just passed by. Um, so anyway, um, what what I'm thinking right now is that what we ought to say as Christian Orthodox men to other men is like, of course you're supposed to seek for a wife, but you're not supposed to like run towards a wife as if your wife was going to complete you. Like your wife is not there to make your life easier in the sense of like being like a kitchen appliance or just helping you out with your, let's say, with your purpose. She's not going to be like you may be lucky and find a wife like that, but that's an expectation that you cannot assume. So anyway, I think that those kinds of things, those kinds of, let's say, presuppositions that we have that our wives will be the perfect help me, the perfect complement, are kind of let's say, things that we have to discern before before we are somehow somehow committed to the idea of getting married. Because if you think about it with like, I only have two choices, either I get married or I'm a monk, or I'm an unmarried priest, then that forces you to feel like a failure if you don't, let's say, somehow betray yourself in a sense. And I've seen a lot of, let's say, Orthodox people marry and divorce, which I think divorcing is worse. Is I don't know what you think about it, but I think that divorce is worse than a than not getting married at all.
Well, I mean, a lot of it just depends on the situation. I mean, I think you should avoid divorce at all possible. My wife and I both come from divorced families, and we're looking at this as our opportunity to, give our kids something that we didn't get, and break generational chains and all that, and being able to, yeah, change the course of our families. So there's a lot of that, to get into what you said. So I think a lot of this whole conversation has been this tension between the ideals and the embodiment. And
Yeah.
I think you should, as a man, strive for ideals. Like, even like I don't know how many more bullet points we have to go through, but I mean, the first one was basically, don't be hypocrites. Like, let your yes be yes, let your no's be no, walk the talk. And that is the ideal. But the embodiment is that you're going to fail that without even realizing it. And it might take you a long time to realize you failed it, or you've been suppressing it, you've been sweeping under the rug, and you're correcting course. That's part of the embodiment, is knowing that the ideal is something that you're striving for, not something that, until the ideal woman comes, I'm just going to sit here and wait for her. God's got to give me the ideal woman that's going to be super base and devout and pious. And I think, especially if you're going to get married, you're considering getting married, you should be having a long-term mindset. I mean, my wife and I, next year, I'll be turning 30, and my wife will have known me for 10 years. So she'll have known me for a third of my life, and she's seen me change a lot. And I'm sure I will keep changing. And I'm as a man, you should just be doing everything you can to try to course correct and continue down the path that God has laid out for you. And I mean, even if you marry somebody who ends up whatever, I don't know, there's tons and tons of situations that can happen. But let's just say, like, something terrible happens to them, or they have some traumatic experience. Their dad dies, and it really messes them up, and they're depressed for 3-4 years. And, like, the wife is just waiting for him to get over it or whatever. I mean, that's the love and the cross to carry, in that marriage, this hypothetical marriage.
Yeah, I completely agree. There was, I think Peugeot had a conversation with Jordan Hall on lately.
Yeah, I listened to that this morning, actually. And
Yeah,
so
I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it in your voice.
oh yeah, I mean, it's
In your words.
what my subconscious has been thinking about.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, let's, like, Peugeot. I just recently found out that he's married to a Protestant, I believe. He met his wife at a Protestant church, and they were married before he converted to Orthodoxy, I believe. And then he has kids, and part of the priest's economia with their family was that the wife allowed their children to become Orthodox and be raised in the Orthodox Church, despite her, after I don't know how many years Peugeot has been Orthodox, a decade or whatever, 2 decades, something. I have no idea. She never came to the church. She never became Orthodox, but she is allowing their kids to be raised up in this faith that Jonathan has adopted. So there's, and Jonathan was even talking about, it may have been the Jordan, I can't remember who, a recent Peugeot video was talking about, us here in the West, very small percentage, Orthodoxy is on the rise. There's going to be a lot more cradle men and women growing up. So there'll be a lot more women on the market, in the dating market, and then in 2 decades from now. But men right now should not be so rigorous, and if the ideal is here, a devout Orthodox wife that's based and devout and pious and submissive, all these things, perfect wife. If that's the ideal, and you're just going to sit around and wait for it, then nothing's going to happen. You're going to be idle, because you have this immature view of the embodiment of the ideal. That he says, like, you could be looking for a good wife that has good qualities, and maybe you can convert her, but you should be talking, especially if you're already Orthodox, be talking to your priest and be getting blessings for certain things. And there's certain things that we can do in the church. We can't have Orthodox weddings, and if both people aren't Orthodox. If children are going to be baptized that are in some kind of heterodox situation, then there has to be a conversation and intention that they'll be brought up into the faith. All those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have a small counterpoint in the sense that, Well, it's easy for Peugeot to say because he married an unorthodox person, a heterodox, and also I don't dispute that he's right in terms of like ease. What I'm saying is that perhaps um, perhaps what we should do is, let's say, address the fact that we become orthodox as a community, like Father Braga said, and like he stressed that American Orthodoxy will become its own thing. It cannot like take things from Russian Orthodoxy, from Greek Orthodoxy. It has to become its own thing, and
Right.
in
But
that
you can't
sense,
force that. It has to come about in its own way.
yeah. And what I'm thinking about is that of course, um, pitting those two conversations together, we get like a little bit of a contradiction in the sense that, of course, like if we take the principle that we know the Father through the Son, that we know God through our love of our fellow man. Let's say that we can worship God in our love of our fellow man, and that we must love each other in the embodied relationship that we have. Let's say in the material aspect of who we are, in the faults that we have as well. Then of course it makes sense that you want to say, let's say, um, we must love each other despite the fact that we're all individualists and we're all out for ourselves. But Peugeot himself has said that he was lucky was um, that his wife was okay with being poor. And the reality is, for a lot of men that are being told, "Oh, you have to work harder, you have to make more money," before a woman is, let's say, even tempted to consider you as marriageable, which is, I think, a very in a sensible advice. It's very sensible. At the same time, it runs up against the fact that a pious woman will not care about those things,
Right.
but like beyond a certain point. Of course, you need to have a job. Of course, you need to be able to provide at least subsistence, but the thing is, we as individualists, we as let's say self-willing people, both men and women, uh, we're very we're very, let's say, reticent when it comes to adopting asceticism for ourselves, for let's say dialing down the way we live. We don't like to let go of a lot of things. And although orthodoxy, let's say, has a lot of going for it, where I see the biggest difference, like the biggest, let's say, obstacle towards being orthodox, is in asceticism. It's not the theology, though theology would be like the whole, because to even get to theology, you have to be somewhere like near God to get to that, because in the world you're not going to even think, if you're a secularist, you're not going to even consider theology, unless you were like super intellectually gifted and pursuing truth somewhat, which is already a big ask. But if
Yeah.
let's say
Yeah.
you're a Christian, you might be a Protestant, you might be a Catholic, you might even be an Orthodox person, like Cradle Orthodox. But the thing that determines, because there are a lot of very worldly Orthodox people, both male and women, in the church, and they, for example, they don't fast, or they do their own idea, like idiosyncratic thing. And if you talk to them, they sound like people from the world. So I think that the biggest hurdle to that is our ability to, let's say, deal with and there's a difference there between obedience and disobedience, because I think that if we want to preserve, let's say, the possibility for masculinity in a good sense, we have to first define what obedience is. Like going back to what I said about, let's say, some of us becoming orthodox because of the tyranny that we were seeing in the world and trying to look for an out. We kind of become orthodox in the sense of saying that obedience means doing what I tell you to do because I'm higher up in the hierarchy, just because I tell you to do it. No, that's not obedience. I would say that that's a faulty, fallen definition of obedience. And I would propose another one. And hopefully, if I'm mistaken, someone can correct me. But I think that obedience has to be something more like trusting the people who are telling you to do something and doing it anyway, despite you not knowing what it is about. Like if you, for example, if you ask your wife, I don't know, make me a coffee. I don't know. I think she can guess why she wants
Right.
she wants a coffee. She might think he wants to drink coffee, right? But if she does it without knowing, if she does something you ask her without knowing why you need her to do it, that's obedience to me, because she trusts you that what you're asking her to do is ultimately for her own good as well, right?
Right.
So in
And
that
I
sense,
think a lot of this, like again, like the ideal and the embodiment, like that's very real for a child. I mean, my daughter, my oldest, is 2.5, and I'm constantly having to, direct, hey, don't do this, don't do that, please follow me, listen to me, be like asking for obedience, and she's doesn't have the experience, doesn't know that the stove is going to burn her, those kind of things, and uh, children have like this implicit trust. Usually, I mean, sometimes it's with my daughter. It's whenever she's disobedient, it's usually because she's trying to make everything into a game. Like, nope, no, you need it. I'm asking you to do this, and this is not a game. We got to go. That kind of thing. But I think where in a lot of situations, like let's say it's me and my wife, and you mentioned coffee or whatever. So like let's say there's some request I have. Hey, can you please do this? The main reasons I can think of why it wouldn't be communicated, the explicit reason why I have a request that something needs to get done, or one, I'm not sure, unable to communicate it. There's some kind of breakdown in communication, or two, I think most practically is some kind of time constraint. Hey, something, I just trust me. This needs to get done by 4. I don't have time to explain it. Like you just need to trust me and get this thing done. Those are I'm trying to think other than like doing trust exercises, something like that. But like those two are probably the biggest ways that would have to be the case, that we couldn't talk out, hey, this is my reasoning why. Because a lot of times, like when you're married, you have to make we're going to move, we're going to do something, we're going to make a big purchase. There is the conversation of gathering information and what's your thoughts on this? Do you think this is a good move? Okay, the wife doesn't think it's a good move, but the husband does, and the husband decides this is what we're going to do as a family. I want you to submit, and we're going to steer the ship this way. And if I could be right, I could be wrong, but this is how I see it. If you are going against me, that means, this ship is trying to go in 2 different directions, and it's going to start falling apart. And maybe the wife is right. Maybe the wife isn't right. I mean, it just depends. There's been lots of times I make a decision, I look back and I'm like, man, my wife, had something, had something there. She had an intuition that I didn't take as seriously as I should have. And I'm learning that lesson over and over and over, that I need to listen to the red flags, the intuitions that my wife has. That's a very clear marker of how I should be steering. Hello, wife. I love you. Anyways, how you doing, everybody?
that you got some brownie points over there,
Yeah,
because like it was
it's a
it
good time
was
for her to join, for her to jump on.
definitely, definitely. So yeah, I completely agree. The thing is, when is obedience, let's say, out of place, like, or in that hierarchical structure? Like, because the only thing that can break it from my perspective is, no, I think you're gonna kill us all with what you're doing. Like,
Yeah, like okay, well, like I think it's in Everyday Saints. It's a book. I think it's in that. It's a book about Russian monasteries during the Soviet Union, and there was a layman who came and wanted to become a monk, and he was talking to the abbot, and the abbot was talking about obedience, and he's like, I'll do whatever whatever you tell me, I will be obedient. And he's like, okay, see that old monk over there? Go kick his butt and beat him up. And he goes and does it. And he beats up this old man. He comes back. He's like, okay, look, you can see him obedient. He's like, you're a madman. Get out of here. You beat up that old man. You should be able to have discernment to go like, that's not an order I'm going to follow.
That's fantastic, man. That's fantastic. Um, well, yeah, it's important to have discernment. The thing is, like you said, sometimes you're in the same boat. Like, it's not like you can split the baby and you can buy the house and not buy the house at the same time. It's not like you can buy the
Yeah.
house and your wife is is going to stay where she is, right? And
Right.
In that sense, uh, I think perhaps my solution to redefine obedience is a bad solution, because um, then obedience is like simply doing what God wants, uh, despite authority. Like, because in that sense, obedience to what? Obedience to what you were supposed to do it anyway. Is it being like, um is it being like, is it recognizing God's hand in the means that God uses to get to you? Obedience. Is it like seeing, for example, your spiritual father as working with the Holy Spirit to give you direction? Is that obedience then?
Yeah. And I would say I've heard it often said that during when the gifts are being brought out in the liturgy, the priest says, "In fear and faith and love, draw near." And I've heard different saints say that that's kind of like a progress of the spiritual life. You start off at the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord, then you have faith in Him, and then you come to love Him.
Hmm.
So I think that is probably a model for obedience as well. Like with my kids, like there's gonna be times like to for me to guide you, or for me to have the best outcome for you, I need to lay down the law and I need to be feared. And hopefully they come to a point where they can have faith in me and see my consistency, see my love for them, and then come to have that love despite the authority. If you have authority, if you have power, that's something that should be that by necessity should be feared, because if we don't fear God, we cannot respect Him, we cannot love Him, we cannot have faith in Him. If we don't think He's all powerful.
Hmm. Interesting, very interesting. I would have said something different, but probably
Yeah.
mistaken.
What do
Like,
you think? What?
no, no, no. I would have said something like, perhaps kids like love you like first, and then learn to
Yeah.
fear you afterwards. Like, I have no
There,
idea.
there's definitely. I mean, that's definitely an aspect, because like when your kid is so young, when they're 2, you can't just like discipline them the way you would an 8-year-old, because they're not going to understand. Even if, like, I think like there's a big debate on like should you spank and all that stuff. And I've spanked my daughter once, and even then, like, it really hurt me to do. And even though I tried to explain it and was trying to be unemotional, because she like ran into the street, it hurt to do. Didn't want to do it, but I felt like I should. And even then, I was still conflicted if that was the right decision. But like when they're really young, you just have to meet them where they're at. Like they are not gonna understand that discipline. You have to give them the proper discipline. But yeah, I would say like a child probably, yeah, better a car better better than a car spank. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never heard it called a car spank, but it's true. I'd rather spank my kids than a car spanking them. But yeah, I would say that maybe, yeah, potentially that breaks down when you look at a child like my month-old child. It's weird because we know each other, and also we don't know each other. I don't know who this daughter of mine will be, what their personality would be, who they're gonna be. I don't know. And they don't really know me yet, other than my voice and probably my smell, my demeanor, my movements. I mean, she just in the last week started tracking me. I walk by and she goes, kind of like in like a little spurts, like you'd see her neck muscles aren't great, and she's still trying to follow you. Like
Mm,
for the first 3 weeks of her life, she's not really even looking at me.
mm,
But like, does she love me? Do I love her? How can I love somebody who I have such little knowledge of. That the who they are is an unknown to me still.
I definitely disagree there, but I'm not smart enough to. I'm not smart enough to articulate my
I mean, I do
point.
love my daughter. I'm saying I love them, but it's a
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's how it just how can you love someone that that you because I feel like to know someone, to love someone, you have to know them. But a baby, I know that she like spits up and poops, and I know that she has a personality, but it's like her will. She doesn't have the faculties in her body, her speech, her muscle coordination, hand-eye coordination, all this stuff that your will enacts. Whatever she has that will, she has that personality, but it's not uncovered. It's not made manifest yet.
I have no idea, man. I'm super dumb when in that respect. Like, but I want to like I don't want to even get into that because I feel like I'm gonna say something stupid. So I
Oh,
want
it's
to ask
fine. I mean,
you.
that's hey, that's part of the embodiment is as a man, you gotta interact and you gotta say your stuff and realize that you're not immune to saying something stupid.
No, of course. I think you love her and you love
Yeah,
the
no, yeah,
person
I
that
do.
she
Yeah,
is.
I do.
But I think it's a kind of a little bit gnostic to presuppose that the person that they become is somehow their true self, because like we don't even know our true selves either.
It's more
Like,
like an unveiling. It's more like an like you know like I said, yeah, like she has that will, she has that personality. Who she is already inside of, is already there, but it's like a lot of it's covered because she can't enact that will. She can't express the way that you and I can.
yeah, well, you can think that she's got more potential. Like
Yeah,
she hasn't materialized who she is fully, but you love what she is now. Like, and
right.
I don't think that those two things are contradictory. But like, anyway, it was such a stupid point to make on my part. I'm sorry. Well,
That's okay.
I wanted to ask, what do you think? Maybe I'm like theory crafting too much in the sense of uh, thinking about children without actually having them. Kind of, it might
I
distort the
think
way I
that's
think
what
about them.
somebody who wants children should do. Somebody who wants marriage should do. But again, it's not getting lost in your head.
Yeah.
It's not getting lost in the ideals and then making an idol out of those ideals. You have to you have to be you have to strive for the ideals without being an idealist or yeah, you can't make them into an idol. You have to deal with the material at hand, right?
What do you make of the that says like count the cost? Like, because I'm a very count the cost guy in the sense that I always try to like overshoot the cost, because I'd rather, let's say, that something that I get to build what I want to build, and that there's like accident. How do you call it when you have more than you need? You have more than you need than to have less than you need. And like, when it comes to, let's say, for example, the spanking, I was spanked as a child, and I didn't appreciate it. I didn't think, first of all, it really set up a bad dynamics within my family. And at one time, like, I was spanked by my dad because I crossed the street, but like I was going through the zebra, through the I was allowed technically to cross. And but I was being looked after uh by by a maid, which was very common, like in Argentina in the 19s when I was born. Around so I was 5 years old and I was spanked, and I hated the fact that I told my dad what had happened, but he believed the maid over me, so he
Mm,
spanked me anyway. And I
yeah, yeah.
carried that grudge for so long. Like, I don't know, 5 years old, and I was like, my dad didn't believe me when I told him the truth, and he spanked me anyway. And
I
that
can I can empathize with you there. I have two older brothers, and my next older brother next to me would like of something that happened tons and tons when I was growing up. I was remember like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, that my brother would tell my parents I did something that I didn't do. And I don't
Mhm.
know if he thought I did that or if he was just trying to like, like torture me or whatever. I think it was just trying to torture me. But my parents were like, "Did you do this?" No, I didn't. Like, well, your brother is more responsible than you. He's older than you. We're going to believe him. I'd get in trouble. And that bred in me a tendency that's carried on, especially like into high school, where I am being punished for a crime I didn't commit, so I might as well commit the crime.
Ooh.
You know, it almost gives me like the license to do it. Like, I didn't do that. Now I'm gonna.
Those sins that become passions in us, man. It's super hard to then dislodge those things from our souls, man. It's super hard, and like, I'm generally speaking, I'm not against physical discipline.
Yeah, I think it should be a nuclear option. Like, it should be reserved for very specific things. You should have thought it out before. You should try to, as much as you can, not to make it an emotional thing or like a thing out of anger. Like, you don't want your kids to feel like they're the object of your wrath.
Yeah. Well, I think that one. Well, the I mentioned the counting the cost because I think the way I idealize how I want my life to go. I don't want to have like children running around like in the streets. I want them to be, let's say, constrained by our living situations to the point where that's not even a possibility until they're smart enough to identify and understand verbally, like a command like don't cross the street,
Right.
you know, because if they're 1 or 2 years old, they're not smart enough to understand, and they might even like the punishment, like spanking them, would be meaningless to my eyes. I don't know, I really don't know, but like that's the impression I have about that situation. And in that sense, is it's not that I wouldn't spank my children, because no, not at all. Like the Bible is clear, like spare not the rod, because like you're gonna spoil your child if you spare the rod. So um in that sense, it's not that I'm against physical discipline. It's like it's such a, let's, like you said, a nuclear option. It's such a like tricky tool in the tool belt to use. So because that can, like, I hate when people don't discipline others uh, for fear of losing them, but that's really something with which you can lose.
Yeah,
Your
I think
children.
like the worst side of the spanking debate are the people who are like super pro spanking. They might be worse than the people who are super anti. I don't know. Maybe they're both bad. I would probably lean towards the people who are super pro spanking, that like they like it's pretty lower on the option. It's not DEFCON 5. You know, it's like, oh, yellow flag, spank. Like, it should be. It should be for, like, you know, there's so many more tools available that can be effective for the crime that's committed, for disciplining them. I think you should try to match that. It's maybe a weird
Or
parallel, but I think also similar, like with your health, like you shouldn't be addicted to pills and medicines and stuff like that. You should be eating. We're starting with diet, sleep, prayer, exercise, herbs, you know, supplements, stuff like that, instead of just being like to me, the going straight to spanking every time is being like avoiding all of the more fundamental stuff and just getting doped up or whatever. Like that it seems like a very similar error to me.
and what about the opposite, in the sense that, what about like if you spank your children just very lightly, like you don't really want to hurt them, but you just spank them like periodically, like if they did, I don't mean to
What? Hey, you know, go get him.
I mean, you can. There's a lot of people talking about like you have to toughen them up. You gotta, and I think they do have a point, perhaps, in the sense like, of course, you're not gonna be spanking them if they're doing everything correct, but rather like you can like lightly, I don't know, flick your finger at them, and then you
Oh, I
can.
mean, yeah, like I mean, this is adjacent to spanking, but like I think that it's appropriate if like you have a 1-year-old, let's say, and they bite their brother or you, that you flick them in the mouth. I mean, you're not gonna be able to like explain, you know, hey, I'm going to flick you in the mouth now because you bit me, and hey, Braden, that's not a nice thing. We don't bite mommy, okay? No, you just they bite you and immediately bam. And then without, because they can't understand your speech, then they can understand your inflection and your tone, and they're going to understand pain.
Well,
I bit, and then
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
experienced pain. Like they're going to have that
Pavlov's
association.
baby. Yeah, Pavlov's baby. But the
Yeah.
problem is the problem with that is that you know that babies feel pain much slower than adults. So it's
Mm.
like until they realize they're in pain, like a couple of seconds have passed, and that's why sometimes they cry preemptively because
Yeah. Have you seen that TikTok trend of people taking their infants or their young children walking through a doorway and they smack the door right behind their head and then they pretend that their kid hit it and then the kid starts crying and acting as if they got hurt, like
yeah.
being gaslit by the parents. That maybe that's like they're also like when a kid falls and like scrapes themselves up, a lot of how they respond to that is depending on how the parents respond. If you're like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" Like, "Oh my," they're gonna be more freaked out. But if you're like, if you either don't say anything, you're like, "Get up, come on, wipe yourself, like dust yourself off." They're just gonna be more likely to get up. What you as a parent put attention on is what the child is gonna be putting attention on usually.
Yeah, and my question would be like, are their parents gaslighting them, or are the children gaslighting their parents as well? It's kind of like a
It's the
corrupt.
chicken and the egg.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because the kid is pretending to be hurt.
Yeah, I mean the kid doesn't feel isn't experiencing pain, but they're looking at the parents, and I'm assuming they're thinking they must know that I'm actually hurt, and I can't trust my own sensations because I don't feel the pain. Maybe the pain's on its way.
Yeah, no, 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 fantastic, and that's a very loving way to analyze that situation instead of a cynical way of like this kid is already learning how to manipulate their
Oh
parents.
no! When I saw that trend, I was on. My immediate reaction was these parents, if they do this a lot, or if they have other behaviors similar to this, that they're gonna reap what they sow. By the time that kid's 12, they're gonna be like, yeah, my parents look at me as a lab rat, and I can't trust them. They made it where I can't trust myself. They're gonna gaslit their kids into being super paranoid.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of like a pattern that we see. Let me give you an insight into my worst theology in the sense of like you know how we converts, like as we try to approach, let's say, the the more substantial of our theological received knowledge from the church fathers, we start with our own presumptions and our own presuppositions that are often wrong and that are inherited from the cultural milieu we're in, right? So my parents were therapists. They were psychoanalysts. That was their faith. So I
Oh,
had a
are they
lot of
behaviorists?
no, no, no,
Oh, okay.
no.
I have a good
Um,
behaviorist joke, but it's weird if I say it right after you mention your parents are psychologists. We'll give it a little bit of time. Remind me later so it doesn't have that connotation.
okay, okay. And like when I started approaching the church's theology, my thoughts were that God, in a sense, kind of um, like it's kind of like he winds up a clock and then he lets it go, kind of more like a deist notion of a, and that you go like your neurons are firing and you're trying things out, kind of very Petersonian in a sense, very Jungian, and that as you like that the kid is like kind of born like like a manipulator, right? And the problem is when I started mixing that with Christian theology, my idea was, well, our sins are basically always broadcasting a broken image, a broken icon of the world. So kids being subjected to the brokenness of their parents actually, let's say, makes them not only perhaps repeat, but become broken in perhaps a different way.
Yeah,
That
something adjacent.
Yeah. So in that sense, my some of what I was thinking at that time was correct. Some of it was wrong, but the problem for me started to appear in the sense that perhaps perhaps some kids, like they're inherently born, let's say, with a tendency towards something that's not let's say, conditioned by the environment, right? And the parents like don't know how to deal with, let's say, a more demanding child, right? A child that demands a lot of attention. Some children cry more, some children cry
Yeah.
less, like those kinds of things. And the damage that is done in those formative years, like, is so huge, so intense, that that child could spend the rest of their lives trying to like unknot those knots that
Yeah.
perhaps, like, it's just it happened one time. But as we know, like a person can be raped, and like the damage from that rupture of let's say reality of that person's, say, mind, it echoes through the years, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, like, when I understand the reticence of the priests who don't want to, let's say, traumatize their flock, but at the same time, the flock itself is already very traumatized, and we the problem for me is that I see a lot of, let's say, priests that instead of giving like a light discipline, like the parent that I was just imagining to just like give it like a flick or a tap or whatever, instead of giving the people small discipline, like they're leaving them to let's say wander off into their own madnesses with just, let's say, verbal directions, as if the narrative itself was a replacement for the relationship, right? Like,
Okay.
and that's kind of a one of the most dangerous things that I can imagine, because going back to the gaslighting, a lot of people are not self-aware of their issues, so they might be doing the thing while at the same time they're probably saying the opposite. That's like the most common thing ever. So if we're talking about, let's say, God, or we're talking about the church, or we're talking about authority, we're talking about masculinity, we're talking fundamentally about trust. How can I trust another person who is broken, who is doing exactly the opposite of what he's saying, right? That's why I started with integrity. Um, like, I think that there's something inherent in integrity that is about, let's say, inner discipline of like trying to not force yourself to be, let's say, how you cannot possibly be, but rather it implies an image of God that is inside you, like you're looking inside of yourself, kind of like the hesychastic prayer, like you're looking for Christ within you, and then you're expecting your body, you're expecting your soul, you're expecting your spirit to align with Christ, right? In that sense. So it's not just like a propositional. It's not like I can tell you you have to do. You have to respect your own word, like if it was a legalistic bond, like you signed it with blood. Now your soul is mine. It's more like it's more like everybody in the world is lying to each other and to themselves because they're
Yeah.
so inherently broken that your proximity with them will gaslight you. Their very being will mean that eventually they will gaslight you somewhere. And people don't have a perfect, let's say, self-reflection, so that even if you do bring it up to them, they're not going to be able to see it, right? Because like you said with your father, like you were trying to talk to him about, like, look, dude, this is what happened when we were growing up. You probably didn't realize that it was
Yeah.
this was.
Or maybe you were lying to yourself or looking the other way or whatever, but like maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong, but this is just how I see it.
Yeah, yeah, and people cannot take. It's very hard for people to take responsibility for that. And my current, let's say, preoccupation with the faith is as I grow in the faith, or perhaps as I become more deluded in the faith, it could be as well. I'm starting to see a lot of priests who are very self-referential, and if you criticize anything, like they'll tell you that you're the problem, you're the problem, you're judgmental, you're this, you're that, they're gonna make it into a you problem instead of a we problem, right? And you might be saying, look, man, we need, I don't know, a coffee maker in the
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this might be contextual. Like, I think that maybe that's an appropriate response if it's like a public condemnation, especially if it's like somebody you don't know. Like if you're sending out tweets to somebody being like, hey, you need to repent of this thing I saw you do, father. It's like potentially like DM them, see if you can get a phone number, a call. Like if you, I don't know. So it's like you should be trying to bring these concerns up in person, or pray for them, or hope that, somebody in their circle that they know personally that they can trust, it can come to them and air these concerns or whatever. Because I mean,
yeah.
especially like a priest, like if it's like an online priest, I'm sure no matter what, they're going to get criticisms. And if they listen to everyone's criticism, then they're going to be paralyzed, and they're going to not really be able to steer the ship and make it go someplace, because it's going to be spinning in the criticisms and all that. I mean, that's you going back to like Aragorn, the book versus the movie. I think as a man, you're trying to, at least me right now, I'll speak for myself. I waver between confidence and feeling like I can be confident in my decisions and where I'm going and the decisions, what I'm doing and who I am, what I'm about, and the doubt of, how can I trust myself to say the right thing at the right time? Can I trust myself not to be lazy when I really need to take action? Can I trust myself to take action the right way and not stumble or be putting my focus on the things that really need to be put on? I see my own inadequacies. I feel them pretty heavily. I feel them on my shoulders, and I'm trying to uproot them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the, Aragorn struggling with the doubt. He's not abdicating his throne. He's still coming back to the throne. And I feel like you gain more confidence the more that you are able to address those inadequacies and then move on. Start to strengthen your strengths and mitigate your weaknesses. But I think that, it can feel really masculine to be very confident and not admit doubts to yourself. But I think that that's when the blinders can come on and those doubts can grow, and they can come to haunt you because you weren't addressing them.
Yeah, completely agreed. Now, the thing is, I'm not talking about better or worse in a moral sense. Well, perhaps I am, but like I think that like movie Aragorn is a much better story in terms of like engaging people. But in your real life, like if you have a problem, you don't want movie Aragorn. You want book Aragorn to come fix your problems.
Yeah.
Because like and this is a thing about, I don't know, stories and empathy, perhaps. Like if you're in your life and if you have a problem, like you're gonna be super in tune with that problem. And if someone comes from the outside to fix it for you, like glory to God, you're gonna be thankful. But if I'm telling you a story and it's like man has problem, man fixes problem, then that story is over in nothing, and it's not very interesting, like intellectually
right.
or aesthetically, right? So in that sense, that's why I said like I think that book Aragorn is more masculine, but like movie Aragorn is, let's say, more, it's richer as a story, and it's in keeping with the themes of the book, and it's in keeping with the, let's say, the grander like thematic development of that story, in the sense of, let's say, the Catholic values about it, the striving for improvement, the redemption, and the, let's say, even the tragic Germanic elements of the books within the film. Like, for example, when I was a child, I really hated the character of Boromir. Because like in the movie, he's portrayed a little bit in a crudely evident way that he's the bad guy, like because he's not as good, because he's easily tempted. But when I grew up,
he submits to temptation.
Yeah, but
comes.
When I grew up, Boromir became one of my favorite characters, in the sense that I could see, let's say, the emphasis on the redemption arc, for example,
right.
And perhaps my favorite character of the films, because I think that he was very masterfully adapted to the films, was Theoden.
Yeah.
But like this romantic hero that is like trying to redeem the fact that he was a crappy king, that he was like he
was deluded.
he was deluded. He's now old, so he cannot do much to change what's already gone through. But the fact that he still like corrects his ways, like
Right.
I feel like I identify deeply with that form of repentance. And also, like, it's fantastic to see, like, to hear a person like, I can go to the halls of my fathers and not be ashamed.
Right.
Beautiful.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's so good. And when he charges, like when he gives his speech, it's fantastic. In the third film, like, ride for ruin and for the world's end. That's, I love it.
I think bringing up Boromir is really a great way to try to have a picture of what I'm trying to talk about with the interplay between doubt and confidence. Because like Aragorn and Theoden and Boromir have the same goal of just defeating the evil one, defeating Sauron. But Boromir and the Council of Elrond have different ways of meeting that goal. Boromir says, this is a powerful weapon. We need to take this weapon and use it against them. But that would corrupt him. That would corrupt anyone of power and not have them reach the goal. So he has this, as a man, we have goals, we have fires to put out. We have to decide to go in a certain way, and being able to have a healthy amount of doubt and question yourself and having the self-awareness, an increasing amount of self-awareness. One of the hardest things to do is to know yourself truly and see your own sin. Is to go, you can't do nothing. You can't just sit in place and do nothing. You have to go some direction. You have to move. But being able to go, okay, I'm off by this, and now I'm going to move this. And Boromir struggled. He submitted to the council, and we're going to go and we're going to take this ring and throw it into Mordor. But even though one doesn't simply actually walk through Mordor, but you kind of do. It was simple, but you did walk. So maybe it was both and or neither or something. I'm lost in the metaphor, but he submitted to that, even though that's not what he thought. And he kept being like, I think I'm right. We should do this. And that is part of what got him killed. But then even then he lays his life down to save the halflings. And I think maybe I've exhausted the metaphor. I don't know. Theoden's pretty cool. Theoden was if we didn't know if my daughter was a boy or a girl, and Theoden was the name we had picked up for a boy.
Dude, that's intense. That's super intense. Just Theoden, or just
Theoden? Theoden Oswald Venable would have been his name, which is weird because like when my until the moment my wife gave birth, and I caught the baby and I looked down and I knew that I had a daughter. It was like in my head and in my dreams and all this. It's like I held it because we had a name picked out for a boy and a girl, and it's like I had imagined both futures of what it'd be like with this son, what it'd be like with this daughter, and like in a moment, it was like Schrodinger's baby. Like in my head, it's both exist until one materializes and the other one just poofs.
Wow. Well, I think that's especially poignant in this day and age when everybody does the test, because like that used to be the norm. Like, the only other way would be like to piss in something and to have like an old baba like tell you, oh, if it smells really bad, it's gonna be a it's gonna be a girl.
If you had asparagus yesterday, it sounds very Jewish for some reason. We spin the dreidel, and if it turns to the left, then it's a boy.
No, that's fantastic, man. Like I can imagine the acceleration, like, and what would you want it to have? What did you want for?
That's. I mean, people ask those kind of questions, and it's like you don't really know how to reply because it's whatever God gives you is for your salvation.
You don't know how to tell them they're fucking assholes, but for
either way, it's my kid. I mean,
it's my kid.
I don't. I feel like my mind just goes to like negative examples before anything when people ask that. Like there's this, you can find this old letter from a Roman centurion. He's out on campaign and he sends a letter back to his wife, who's pregnant, and it's talking about like what to do and bring up the child in education. Oh, and if it's a girl, quietly dispose of it. So it's like, I don't know. There's this tendency for men to be like, I want a son. I want to be able to play catch and pass all these things down and help him be a man as a father. And I think there's something good about that. But I think that that can invert to where like men are disappointed that that they have daughters. They're disappointed they don't have a son. And, you know, I had friends who are like, may your child be a masculine child. Like there's something manly about desiring a son. But I mean, I know people that they had like 3 girls and they're like, I'm done. I wanted a boy, but I don't want another girl. So I don't want to flip the coin again. So there's something like weird about this modern mindset of playing God or whatever. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but what do I have wanted to have? I mean, that's like when people ask me like, how many kids do you want? And I just say, you know, Lord's will be done. I don't know. Uh, I'll have however many God decides us to have, and that's the very contra to the modern mindset. I know tons of people who are like, do not be outnumbered. Have 2 kids. If you have a boy and a girl, cash out. Don't have more kids.
No, no. I think that's you're doubting your own leadership capabilities by that point. It's like you're
Right.
hamstringing your little army of goblins needs to grow. Uh, like you need to have as many as you can, man. And like my question, going back to the whole, let's say, being beset on all sides by enemies, by your own bastard children, like coming back to like to usurp your authority. um like I think that there's a huge issue, of course, when it comes to like this, like being pumped with fear by, I don't know, modernity, by, there's a point where like those fears are real. Like I do not judge women who don't want to live in poverty. I do think it would be better if they were like willing to endure poverty, but at the
Right.
same time, it's like the moment you're bringing children into the mix, like now you're spreading your resources a little bit thin. And let's raise the stakes even higher. Like let's say you want to be a priest. You're already married, you have children, and you presumably want more on the way, or you're going to be celibate if not, because
Right.
that's
And
the
I mean,
rule,
I've
right?
personally seen priest children who kind of go off the rails because you know, the dad is my father, who's a priest, is putting his flock above his own children, from their perspective, that he's always going out and doing house blessings. He's always with people, that if we have family dinner, there's guests from the church or whoever, or whatever. They feel like they're not being given enough attention because their priest is giving of himself so much to the flock. I've
Yeah,
seen
and
that.
that's the real reason why I was always like playing devil's advocate before, because there's a point where like the rubber meets the road. Like I'm with you with the whole like the Peugeot conversation about, let's say, let's be more incarnate. But the problem is, like, if you're being taxed to death, you're a
Right.
layman, and the only thing you have access to as an Orthodox person is a parish priest who has a family. How much can you really ask from that parish priest? Because it's okay that we as Orthodox have, let's say, we have the possibility of having married priests, of course, as long as they like married before becoming priests. But we actually need more monastics. And like, and by monastics, I don't mean like people should not have children. I mean the people who want to have children should have 10 or more, and they should tithe as much as they can. But at the same time, we need monastics to help out with the whole parish life, because not only does having monastics like keep the priest in check, because it's like an example they can look to, like that is close to their life, but not really, because they're consecrated to God, while they perhaps might not be able to go so far. And some monastics are ordained, some monastics aren't ordained, but fundamentally, the thing, the problem that I'm seeing, perhaps I'm I'm projecting it onto Orthodoxy at large, when it's just a couple of parishes that I've seen this happen in. But like married Orthodox priests, they really cannot give more than what they're giving, even if it's little, because they made previous commitments to their wives and to their children and to their unborn children as well. So like, if we are looking at it from a very cynical mathematical, like way, like a priest can have children as long as their wives are fertile, and the younger they got married, the more children they might have, and that could be a very big financial burden. But think about it from the perspective of the priest's wife. Of course, the priest would have probably become a priest with the blessing of the wife, because no bishop would be stupid enough to like ordain a priest if their wife is going to be against it, because it's a lot to ask from a wife. Now,
Right.
imagine the economic situation isn't very good, so the priest stops having marital relations with his wife just to not have children, and to let's say pursue a more holy a more holy white marriage, as I think it's called. I don't know if it's called like that in
I
English,
mean,
but
like that's Saint John of Kronstadt. He and his wife never consummated their marriage, I believe.
oh, that's intense.
They lived as monks. They lived as monastics together.
That's really intense. That's really intense. I know I wouldn't be able to do such a thing, in a way, it's kind of like the worst of both worlds, right? Because if we're talking about if we're talking about like the only thing that you have in favor is that you're probably not gonna you're not gonna have children if you're not having sex. But like that's the only, let's say, positive when it comes to, let's say, removing a load from you. But what I'm thinking about is, of course, a lot of, let's say, pundits in our spheres, they want to say like children, they're always good, and I want to agree. Children, yes, the more the merrier, right? But at the same time, like, we have to be mindful of the cost of what we want our parish life to be, of what we expect from our priests, of the current situation. And we also have to be mindful about politics. Like the whole reason I made a channel about politics, perhaps misguided on my part, was that there's an aspect where if you remove politics from the conversation, because you're only supposed to be talking about spirituality, then what happens is that it's like you stop listening to your wife. It's like it's already you're removing, you're speaking in the vacuum. You're speaking to
Right.
to someone who's not really there, who's not a real person. You're speaking to an idea of a person, and they have problems, they have difficulties. And I'm not saying that you should pursue, let's say, a worldly kingdom, but you have to be mindful that if the place where you are is taxing you to death, some of the things that you're going to say, it's going to be very difficult for you to apply, precisely because of the economic situation. And what I'm seeing is two things that are very much against us. First of all, discernment is very rare, and this means that we're a lot of people just take things as they are for granted. Like they're not even able to notice what is happening. Like, for example, what happened with the stabbies. Like, most of the people, like the world has plodded along as if nothing had happened, and a lot has happened.
Right.
A lot has happened, and it's not like I'm bitter and I want to remind people about what happened, but it's simply to say, look, a lot of people are super asleep, and those people, in a sense, are compromised. And from that first point, I wanted to make the second point, which we already talked about, which is, people will be compromised, but people are not compromised equally, and like in the same. They don't have the same blind spots. And what I mean by this is, like, of course we're going to gaslight each other, unfortunately, because we're not saints. But it's not just a simple, clear cut answer of trust all the time, don't trust ever. I think that's kind of like that's too easy of an answer. And the whole obedience thing, and the whole, like, male female, you cannot just speak, like, pontificate on these things, and expect to have like a one size fits all solution, when in reality, like, the importance of the question is embodied, is in the personal relationship, is in the person you're talking to. Like,
Right.
it's nice to say, well, just lower your standards, like Peugeot said. Okay, but even if you were talking, let's say, to the majority, you might be talking to, I don't know, 99% of the population. That 1% that really needs the opposite message, is being underserved by that, let's say, gnostic way of approaching the problem. And this does not, let's say, solve the problem of trust. It perpetuates it, because now you're it's kind of like a paradox. You're denouncing the talking heads by becoming a talking head, right? And like,
Right.
that has a performative contradiction that is, to me, very important, because you're saying, okay, people now uh don't trust what others say, or they expect to be led completely by the other person, which is basically like tyranny, codependence, like the whole gamut on both things. It's like cynicism, like the postmodern, I don't believe in grand narratives, or the opposites, like, my bishop should like make every decision for me, my husband like
Right.
should handle all of those things. I don't know, I just follow. Like, those things are not like healthy solutions at all. And
Well, I think a man should lead, but that doesn't mean, and when a wife submits, that doesn't mean that she's not, bringing everything that she can to the husband. Like, this is how I see it. This is what I think you should, let's say you're going to do business with somebody potentially, and you and your wife go on an evening dinner with this other couple. And it's a potential business partner. It's all made up, and you think it's really great, and you have a great night with this guy, and you're like, I think I'm gonna start this business with this guy, and your wife in the car goes, don't do it, don't do it. The way he looked at me, no, you can't trust that guy, and she might not even be able to like put it in words, but I mean, she's going to follow your lead, but like your wife has intuitions and is able to pick up on things at a deeper level, at a level that oftentimes they can't directly communicate. There's lots of times my wife will try to say something like, there's something behind your words, like what the real need is that you're trying to communicate isn't the words that are coming out specifically. It's something that you don't even have the words for. It's like the husband has to try to figure out how to get what's being communicated past the words, because your wife isn't thinking about that. Intuitive part of her isn't the rational part, or the part that's explicitly rational. It's okay, well, you're not really upset about finances. It's actually because of this other fear that's happening, and that it's just coming, it's being expressed in this way. You have to, as the husband, be able to stop and realize that the conversation you're having oftentimes in your marriage is not the conversation you're having, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the problem with sticking with a propositional is that you're going to tyrannize the other person, and like, okay, women are crazy, women are this, it's like, no, perhaps you're not listening, really.
Right.
You're not listening. And I say this, and I mentioned like bad priests, because we're all broken, and you're gonna probably find a bad priest. That it's very common among priests that like they want to defend something, and like, instead of listening to what you're saying, they're gonna turn it on you, and it's gonna feel like the same kind of gaslighting as what's been happening, I don't know, with a let's say with a protest in England, in the UK. And it's like the government is telling you, like, for example, not to rebel against authority, but you're like, no, this is authority is illegitimate.
Yeah, the authority is killing us.
Yes, this is killing us. So in that sense, like, I think we talked about it before, didn't we? About this, like, Father Turbo, let's say, attempt at kind of bringing people that are going too far in his mind to the right into a more moderate position.
Soberness, sobriety.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, with the whole gaslighting, that the whole gaslighting that is going on, I think that the pendulum will eventually swing too far.
Yes, it will. It will. I think that's what it's going to be. I mean, yeah, the danger from the left that's happening right now, like with migration and open borders and openness, that's the point where the population is so diluted that it becomes extinct, is a very real threat. But let's just like say here in America, with all the woke stuff, all these the dissolution of boundaries, and tying it with masculinity, I think a part of being a man and being a father, a husband, is boundary setting, being the wall of the castle, being like this. I am what I allow into my house, into my family life. Like if I invite people over, whatever is what is coming through the walls and is going to actively affect my kids, actively affect my wife, and all the stress and all the different thing, all the influences. So here in America with all the woke stuff, like, yeah, that is damaging the society, damaging the people. But the temptation on the right to clap back really hard, I think that's going to be potentially more bloody, whether really embodied or more just metaphorically. It's can lead to, it's like a feedback effect, right? The left goes crazy and that gives the right the justification, and then that makes the left feel more victimized, and then they feel more justified. And it's a crazy roller coaster that's speeding up.
Yeah, definitely, and which is why I was mentioning the fact that we are not transparent to ourselves. So so we have to take into account the possibility that we're not the ones that are listening correctly, and if you find that someone is not able to listen to you, you should just like the Bible says, like dust off your sandals and go. Like even if they're like in a position of authority, like it's not helpful for you to get angry at them. It's not helpful for you to
Right.
fight them. It's not even if they're heretics and if you're Orthodox, you shouldn't like try to kick them out of the church. Like
Right.
that's not what you're supposed to do. What you're supposed to do is to take care of your own, and like you gotta protect your own from those people. And the problem I see is that people are fighting to impose their wrong-headed views of how society should be run,
Right.
and uh, nobody is getting it right because and this is perhaps a paradox, but like the people who should do that, they don't want to. Like the people
Oh,
who,
you always hear that's the people you actually want in power, the people that aren't power hungry.
exactly. So the that begs the question: do the people who are able to set those boundaries um, themselves mistaken in not stepping up to a responsibility that they are not even asked to, or is it that we ourselves are rebellious? I mean, we the people, and also the passions. That going back to the whole, is it the spirit or the heart? The
Right.
problem, and I think that's what me like the people who would lead us, they're not being, let's say, lifted up into those positions. So in that sense, there aren't spiritual fathers because there aren't good spiritual sons, and that's what I think. But it's so difficult to, like, we had just we were having just a 2 hour and a half conversation just for me to try to even approach articulating this thought. How would you even say that to another person? Like, it's impossible.
Which part?
No,
Oh,
the,
the whole conversation.
yeah, the whole, yeah, you actually need to be obedient before before you want to other people to be obedient to you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that goes back into integrity, and I think it's in the Dadu Chang that says a glass can only spill what it contains. So if you don't have the integrity, if you don't have what you're trying to pass on to people, if it's just all idealism, it's not, you don't actually have it, then you actually have to work on yourself before you're able to give it. You have to prove, like, let's say in marriage, you have to prove to your wife over and over and over and have the track record that she can trust you, she can have faith in you. And when you mess up, like, you better be honest with yourself. You better start course correcting, because your wife sees it. She does see it, and she's going to let you know.
Yeah. Well, do you want to like cut it short, or do you want to talk about nonsense for a little while?
We can get like 10 minutes of nonsense.
Okay. Because I was thinking, like, this week I had an issue with a guy from my previous parish who got a hold of my phone, and he was like trying to invite himself. In fact, the stream was inspired by him. He tried to invite himself into a conversation with me, like to give me advice. You know, those people like that like don't know how to relate to other people, and they're like always speaking as if they were authorities
Yeah.
and giving you spiritual advice,
Yeah.
even though
I know some of those people. Yeah. I pray to God that I'm not one of them. I mean, maybe I fall into that as well. I don't know.
No,
If I do, please let me know. Let me know.
I'm definitely falling like slightly too in that direction, but in a way, it's like the issue to me is not that he what.
I'm trying to actually recount, and I do feel like I see that within myself, like giving advice, whether it's solicited or unsolicited. There's sometimes sometimes people will tell you their problems or whatever, and you feel like, just do this. What are you doing? Like.
Yeah, and I was thinking like what makes that okay? That what makes that an okay interaction? And I think like the relationship itself is what makes it okay. Like
Right.
And that's why in our previous conversation I think I stressed the fact that actually the church hierarchy has to be the one deciding, let's say, who gets to, let's say, give spiritual advice and those kinds of things.
Right.
Now
Yeah, I mean, there's times like I believe it was in Russia, like there were priests, there was lots of priests, and a lot of them were uneducated, and they didn't have the blessing to give sermons. But they can administer the sacraments, and they can. You also like many priests, you have to earn the right for hearing confession. Like you get the part of the vestment. It's like a shield with the Theotokos on it usually. That now you're able to give blessings. Maybe that's not in every tradition. I'm not sure, but it's definitely an Antiochian and Russian, I believe.
Interesting. I didn't know about that. So are they're ordained, right?
Yeah, they're ordained. They do liturgies, but they're not able to give to listen to confessions, give absolution until they like their hierarchy, their bishop bestows that upon them, and then now they can actually wear a new part of their vestment that says, now I'm able to. I had the blessing to hear confession.
Makes a lot of sense. And well, we were going to speak about nonsense, but now we're talking about this serious thing. But like, no, it's okay.
So this freaking butthole of a man is trying to come in your life and tell you what to do. Yeah. Tell me about this man. Let me get mad at this man. Let's scapegoat him. And he's the problem.
Yeah, in some sense, yes, he is the problem. Like
screw that guy, man.
Like we were talking about.
Know him. I don't like him already, man.
he's talking to me about socialism and the virtues and how Orthodox Christianity isn't incompatible with communism, right? And I'm like, dude, disgusting. Anyway, I was like telling him like, dude, you're inviting yourself to a conversation. I'm not interested. Like, and he was like trying to guilt me, and he showed me like pictures of my own words to defend his idea. Like he was already on the defensive about being pushy, like trying to kind of be manipulative. And it reminded me of, those kind of insecure beta males that are trying to like talk to a girl, and the girl for some reason tells him, okay, I'll go out with you, whatever. And then like when the girl sees that this guy is a creep, and then the guy like pulls up the screenshot of her saying, oh, but you agreed to like going out with me, right? And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not going out with you, man.
All women are can't believe all women are like this.
Yeah, and like that's what it feels to be under the boot of these governments, these tyrannical governments. It's like, oh, but here in this piece of paper it tells me that you have to give me all your belongings. It's legitimate.
It says right. I'm not the bad guy. I'm not. It's not me. It's not me. It's right here. Get mad at this, not me.
Yeah. So anyway, to cut a long story short, a that guy. Lord have mercy.
What a goblin. What a
What a
goblin
God.
of a man. I don't even know. A commie goblin, dude.
Lord have
I
mercy.
feel like all my problems in my life are based off this dude. I don't even know him, dude. But I feel like if something bad happened to him, things start going my way somehow. You know? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the problem is we're all this guys sometimes, but like, and this is the where the feminists go, like, where the anti-feminists say, like, the joke of the guy asking the girl at the office for her phone number, and the difference is that one is good looking and the other one is a fat slob. You know that meme? And it's like, yes, of course that meme is true, and why wouldn't it?
Right.
Like, the problem is that the fat the one on the bottom, it's the problem is not that he's just fat, is that he hasn't really like looked for the cues, because there are cues, there
Yeah.
are cues to the girl perhaps being more willing to say yes. And if she does give the cues and it turns out that she was, I don't know, manipulating you, or you were incompetent at looking at the cues and those things, and you get I don't know, hold to HR because of it, and the world is unjust and whatever, it's like, take it on the chin, be a man, like that's your opportunity to grow.
Yep.
Like, it's gonna happen, but the fear of it happening should like prevent you from doing it. It should like just sharpen you to make you smarter at it. But if you're like, oh, this is too rough, then you're not a man. Like, you're just like a fat slob, like, that's doing nothing.
You're probably a
So,
communist. Honestly. Fat slob communist. Give me everything. Give me the slop. I don't want to do anything. Gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you okay, we'll end it with this question. So one thing I learned from Jocko Willink is that if you're a man, if you're a leader, that when one of your subordinates, your underlings, messes up, it was your fault. It was your fault. You can't blame him. He's under your command. So that's one thing I've tried to adopt in my life. Like, when there's problems in the marriage, no matter what, if let's say my wife thinks it was her fault and she needs to apologize, I'm like, no, this is my fault. I'm the head of the household. Everything under my dominion is my responsibility. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not smart enough to give a good reply. I'd say that I like it in concept, because I imagine like the Genghis Khan horde attitude is like you sitting on the can seat, and it feels like you're owning stuff. It's like it's a good feeling, but
Right.
at the same time, like, you're always given stuff. You're always given stuff to work with that perhaps is unideal. So, and I do think that, for example, sometimes you got to say no, like, because, well, my criticism of a lot of priests is that they're saying, like, basically they're all our people because Christ is calling all of them. But it's like, if there's a bad apple, you got to kick them out, and you're going to say, like, no, the same way, like, Christ is going to say, like, I do not know you. Like, if you haven't, like, so there has to be a, like, you want to tend to, like, take responsibility for those things, but it has to be genuine. It cannot be like, oh, this guy that I'm the boss of, because he used to be my partner, but I got I don't know, I got a better job and now I'm his boss. Like, that, you're not responsible for their mistakes. You're responsible, like, to your bosses, like, for what's going on, but not for their particular mistakes. You're responsible for being unable to rectify the situation. And sometimes, and perhaps this is for another conversation, sometimes you're giving people to work with that simply won't work. Like, sometimes you simply cannot win. And, like, I think part of being a man is understanding that sometimes you simply cannot win. Like, things were stacked against you from the beginning, but you're gonna get to play again sometime, because God is not that. Like, the tyranny that you see in your fellow man is not of God. So if you see a bad priest, if you have a bad husband, if you're this and that, none of that is an excuse for you to turn from God. Like, but you have to understand, to be realistic about the situation you're in, and to know who you're dealing with, because sometimes you have like a difficult, usually if it's your child, I would say it tends to be more your responsibility. Like, you raise them. If they're insane, it's probably you're doing right. You made a mistake along the way. But if it's an employee, no, perhaps that's not your responsibility. That's my take, but I could be mistaken.
I mean, I've read his book. Was it something accountability? I can't remember the name of the book, but it's he's in the military. He's a Navy SEAL, and he's talking about, like, if you're in command, you have a squad of people. It is your responsibility to train them and have them understand and be able to communicate fully enough to where, if one of your guys dies, it wasn't because he was stupid. It was because you didn't train him enough. You didn't set him up for success. Like that. It's always. And I think, like Rip says, like, what accountability do they have then? I get what you're saying, but then you're taking away their responsibility and accountability. I think that, like, as an ideal, this can break down to where it's like delusional and not actually making it a team or whatever you want to say, where we're coming together. Both of our wills are trying to align, and our responsibilities and accountability are aligning. But it's like a heuristic that keeps you from going, well, it wasn't me. Hey, no, my underling. My wife. It's going, okay, even if I messed up a year ago and I wasn't communicating enough, or maybe I should have directed things differently, or maybe I should have been more aware. Like, I think it's in its best form, it's going, something in the way I'm operating is not at full capacity. I need to figure out what that is, because if I was more at full capacity, this problem could have at least been mitigated. The fire wouldn't have been as big. Whatever it is, whether it's in work or life or family. And hey, Yvonne, have you played Halo Reach?
No, I'm not a big
Go play that.
shooter.
Oh, well, maybe just go look up the last mission on that one, because I think video games have a great potential ability to tell stories in like an experiential way, where instead of, it's like really great, it can be really great at showing instead of telling, to where it has the one of the things that you just said of, sometimes the cards are stacked against you, sometimes you're gonna lose. That was communicated to me in a way when I was like 14 through this video game, because like one mission is just that, like, no matter what, you lose, and you can try as hard as you can, and you will lose. And like, there's literally no way to win. And like, as a 14-year-old video game addict brain, it was like wow, I've never had that communicated to me in a story like this, where you're just, you can't win, but that doesn't mean you give up. Like, you fight with your, you die on your feet.
Yeah, I think that while you were speaking, I think I found a lot of virtue in your argument. If the case is that you can choose your team, in the sense of that, like, if you can decide, if you can make your team, then yes, you're responsible. But if you're simply given what you're given, and you're supposed to, let's say, make the best out of it, sometimes you're, I think, and this is where my theology runs out, but like, I think that God makes exceptions. You can win in God's eye while lose in the world's eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, trying to like, so I used to work at a summer camp, and there was times where we would have like troubled youth come in, and it was like, you're either going to go do community service or juvie, or you're going to go to the summer camp. And it wasn't like a camp specifically for that, but that we had like a program where, like, okay, this month is basically mostly these troubled kids, and mixing in with other kids. So, as the leader of this camp, that's, I took these kids on like 4 or 5 day backpacking trips, 3, 4, 5 day backpacking trips, where it's like, it's me, my partner who works at this camp, and then like 7 kids. And some of them, like, did various bad things in school or whatever to be in that situation. And I have to get them to fall in line with me, because we're going out in this mountain. And I have to, I'm sorry, I have to there's these expectations on us of like what we're trying to instill in them, and they have to pull their weight and all these different things. And there are some interesting stories, and like I said, yeah, you can probably pick holes in this from like a philosophical way, but I think it can be, and maybe it can be refined in some way through picking it apart. But instead of having the lazy mentality of, well, these are troubled youth, the stacks is card stacked against me, there's nothing that these kids are that's gonna get through these kids to get them to change, or how can I possibly do that? It's like, okay, well, this is the situation. I'm gonna kick these kids' ass and try to do my best to get them to stop being little retards, little punks, and I'm gonna do my damnedest. And if they don't, they're not able to reform and feel a little bit of weight of responsibility and taking care of themselves and having some self-respect, then I didn't do my job as well as I could have.
That's you were telling me I sounded idealistic, dude.
And now I'm saying this ideal. Hey, attack this ideal.
With this ideal, I'm gonna become like a burnt out teacher. I'm gonna like strive for the first 10 years of my career as a teacher, and then the rest of my life I'm gonna be bitter, and I'm gonna be slightly racist because these inner city kids can't be taught anything. No, I'm kidding.
Now we need a total. Oh no! Don't tell me. No. That's worse than people said I looked like Owen Benjamin. That's worse. It don't sound like. Now, this is an ideal that Mr. Westford is talking about, and then it's just like generic music, and then just me. I had the personality of a white sheet of computer paper. What an insult!
Yeah, for real, I would be super offended. I would be super offended.
Yeah, you would be, wouldn't you be?
Your chat hates you.
At least Moldy's not here anymore. That guy, man.
They hate watch you. They hate watch you.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I don't have anybody as bad. Like there's like, I don't know, made by Jim Bob. He has some people that have been there for like 2 years that just hate watch. They like seethe every day. I'm like, what do you get out of this?
Oh, what? Let's ask the chat what debate they're talking about, because
something about Andrew Wilson.
Did you see it?
No. Was it on? I mean, it had to be like on the whatever. My wife has actually been watching that more than I have. I find it very cringe. I've only tried it like once to watch the whatever podcast.
I cannot. No, I haven't ever watched a single episode of it, but I've watched like the clips, and the clips are pretty effective. But it's like super depressing, because if you take that as a sample of the population, like it's like you're.
Oh, it's probably a much bigger sample of the population than I could ever fear.
Okay, well.
Oh, the Raging Tomato. Okay, I saw the thumbnail.
Okay. Anyway, thank you, Mom, for having me. This has been fun. I think we covered the bullet.
Yeah, that was it. We exhausted it. I don't think there's any more to go.
Yeah. So
I think this is going to be like go down in history as like definitive masculinity.
No. I think this is going to be like definitive as the attempt at. It's like
yes,
the best, almost reaching, but not quite.
Well, if I didn't achieve the best 2 hour and 47 minute 32 second video talking about masculinity, then it was my fault. I didn't do everything in my power to make this the best stream ever. Even if it was Ivan's fault, it was really my fault.
Great.
I worked with what I had, folks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jocko.
Yeah, thank you, Jocko. Do you want to shout yourself out? Where can people find you? What do you do? I have your link in the description.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you can find me at Christ is King Philosophy. It's a political philosophy channel if you're interested in that kind of thing. I'm also not going to be doing a lot of new content on political philosophy per se, but applied political philosophy, in the sense that I'm going to do a little bit of, let's say, commenting on news, on those kinds of things, and from an orthodox perspective. So if you're interested in that, like, go check it out, and see you there.
All right, folks. Thank you. Don't be effeminate. Don't be it. Hey, be a man. Like Father Josiah Trinum says, men being effeminate, it's grotesque.